Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We're gonna get started. I'm gonna call this meeting to order, and I would ask. Well, today is Monday, March the 18th, 2019. It's 5 o'clock. We're in the Government Services Building, and I'm going to call this meeting to order and ask Commissioner Hanson if you would lead us in the pledge, please.
Please join me with to salute our flag and our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I would ask that you please join me in a moment of silence. And as we offer a moment of silence today, remembering all the good things in our lives and the first responders and our military men and women that serve in our country, I would also like to draw special attention to March the 25th, which is National Medal of Honor Day. In 1990, the United States designated March the 25th of each year as Medal of Honor Day, which is the United States of America's highest military honor. It is awarded only to U.S. military personnel by the President of the United States in the name of Congress, and it's for personal acts of valor above and beyond the call of duty. So let's take a moment and remember all those folks that have received that prestigious honor, and also all the other folks that serve us. Okay, thank you. All right, we have a very busy agenda and a lot of things to get through today. Before we do that, the first order of business is additions, deletions, and modifications to the agenda. And I do have 3 items. I'll read them out and then ask commissioners how we want to handle them. The following items for consideration at today's meeting were received after the agenda was published. Number 1 is ratification of the Flagler County Library Facility Rules and Code of Conduct Policy. And this came through staff, and it's a request the board ratify the facility rules and code of conduct as adopted on March 11, 2019 by the Library Board of Trustees. This item went to the Library Board of Trustees after the publishing deadline for this agenda, which is why we need to consider it separately to add. Number 2 is consideration of approval to design Phase 2 Plantation Bay wastewater treatment facility improvements, and that's an approval to move forward, looking for an approval to move forward with the design of Phase 2 at the Plantation Bay wastewater treatment facility, and authorization for the County Commission Chair to execute the work authorization document with Kimley Horn Associates, Inc., which is to provide the professional services as approved to form by the County Attorney and by the County Administrator. And again, the justification here is due to the immediate needs, staff is seeking approval to move forward with this project, and more detailed information is expected to be brought forward soon. The third item for consideration is funding for acquisition of an 8,000 square foot facility on Palm Coast Parkway in the amount of $1,125,000. And the request here is for the board to approve and authorize the county administrator to execute any instruments and approve the transfer from reserves necessary to effectuate the purchase as approved to legal form by the county attorney. And the justification here is that at the March 4th meeting, staff was directed that this item be brought back and not bundled with other items. And due to the closing date, it is necessary to include this item on the agenda today. Does the commission wish to place these items on the agenda for consideration later in this meeting? If so, if someone would please designate where you think these items need to go on the agenda and make a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that all 3 items be put in the consent agenda portion of the agenda to be labeled 7F for the ratification of the public library facility rules, and 7G for the consideration of approval to design Phase 2 of the Plantation Bay wastewater treatment facilities, and 7H for consideration of funding for acquisition of an 8,000 square foot facility.
Mr. Chairman?
Sir.
Before I second it, I will second it. I think they belong in the general business section more than the consent agenda. So I would recommend we amend it to E, D, E, F, and G, 8E, F, and G, since some of them are discussions of money and new things.
I will modify my motion to that, put them in paragraph 8.
Right.
For 8, E, F, and G.
And I would second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to include the additional items on the agenda as agenda items in general business, 8E, F, and G. That's the motion. We have a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries unanimously. Okay. So we're set up on that. Next, we have announcements by the chair. And I'll go through those. Flagler County Board of County Commissioner meetings, as a reminder, are broadcast via YouTube. Unfortunately, due to the nature of the live streaming process, there may be unavoidable delays. When the meeting has concluded, it is typically posted within 24 hours and can be viewed again in its entirety. Flagler County would like to ensure that everyone receives important messages in a significant emergency or a disaster, and to sign up for our Alert Flagler or to register for the Special Needs Registry, please visit our website, which is flaglercounty.org/emergency, or you can call 386-313-4200 for information or to help get registered. Saturday, March the 23rd, at Fire Station 16, we'll have an open house. Come meet your local fire resource personnel, and you can get a tour of our fire station there. And for more information, you can contact our fire marshal, Mr. Jerry Smith, at 386-313-4258. Can anyone tell us where? I apologize not knowing what's the address for Fire Station 16, where it is. No one knows that off the top of their head, so I'm not the only one. Okay, so we'll figure that. I just thought I would tell everybody where that is. What's that?
Hit the alarm.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. Okay. Flagler County is soliciting registered voters residing in Flagler County for our various citizen volunteer boards and councils. And some of these positions by law must be filled by persons currently representing certain occupations or residing in a specific area of the county. And these positions will remain open until filled. And if you're interested in any of the ones I'm going to announce, please try to contact us as soon as possible, and I'll tell you about that in a second. We need one member from the labor home building industry for our Affordable Housing Advisory Council. We need 3 members for our contractor review board, a plumbing contractor, roofing contractor, an engineer or architect contractor. We need 1 member for our Economic Opportunity Advisory Council that would come from finance, investment, or the banking industry. We need 1 citizen at-large member for our Land Acquisition Committee. And we need a citizen at-large also for our Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. And 1 member involved in the tourist industry for the Tourist Development Council. Again, all those positions will remain open until filled. And you can you can get more information about them on our website, which is flaglercounty.org. Look under the section for advisory board vacancies, or you can contact Ms. Christy Mayer at cmayer@flaglercounty.org or 313-4094. As far as upcoming commission meetings, the next regularly scheduled meeting of the county commission is Monday, April the 1st at 9 a.m. right here in the chambers. And then there's also, at this point, a scheduled workshop, which will be also in the chambers. They normally, just as a note, they're normally at the EOC, but this meeting will be in our chambers here, and that'll be April the 3rd at 8 a.m. And just for anyone's knowledge, Station 16 is at Old Dixie Highway and Old Kings Road. So thank you, Ms. Christie, for that. That concludes our announcements, and we'll move into recognitions, proclamations, and presentations. We don't have any recognitions, but we do have a couple of proclamations, and we'll start with our proclamation celebrating Equal Pay Day. And I would ask for Ms. Marianne Clark, and I think you have some other folks here this morning, or this afternoon, excuse me. How are you? Good to see you. So I'm going to ask Commissioner Hanson to read the proclamation, and then
I've got it.
Oh, excuse me, Commissioner Erickson, I apologize, to read the proclamation, and then we'll give you some time. So, Commissioner?
Anybody else? No?
It's not, it's just us, unhappy people.
Flagler County Board of County Commissioners designating April 2nd, 2019 as Equal Pay Day in Flagler County, Florida. Whereas more than 50 years after the passage of the Equal Pay Act, women, especially minority women, continue to suffer the consequences of unequal pay. And whereas, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, women working full-time year-round in 2017 typically earned 88% of what men earned, indicating little change in progress or pay equity. And whereas, according to Graduating to a Pay Gap, a 2012 research report by an American Association of University Women, the gender gap is evident once a year after college graduation, even after controlling for factors known to affect earnings, such as occupation, hours worked, and college major. And whereas in 2019, the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act was signed into law, which gives back to employees their day in court to challenge a pay gap, and now we must pass the Paycheck Fairness Act, which would amend the Equal Pay Act by closing loopholes and improving the law's effectiveness. And whereas, according to one estimate, college-educated women working full-time earn more than $500,000 less than their male peers do over the course of a lifetime. And whereas nearly 4 in 10 mothers are primary breadwinners in households, and nearly 2/3 are primary or significant earners, making pay equality critical to families' economic security. And whereas a lifetime of lower pay means women have less income to save for retirement and less income counted in a Social Security or pension benefit formula. And whereas fair pay, equal policies can be implemented simply and without undue costs or hardship in both the public and private sectors. And whereas fair pay strengthens the security of families today and eases future retirement costs while enhancing the American economy. And whereas Tuesday, April 2nd, symbolizes the time in 2019 when the wages paid to American women catch up to the wages paid to men from the previous year. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners that they hereby proclaim April 2nd, 2019 as Equal Pay Day in Flagler County, Florida, and urge all citizens of Flagler County, Florida to recognize the full value of women's skills and significant contributions to the labor force, and further encourages businesses to conduct an internal pay evaluation to ensure women are being paid fairly. Adopted this 18th day of March 2019, attested Flagler County Board of County Commissioners, Tom Bexley, Clerk of the Court, and Donald T. O'Brien, Jr., Chair. And I'll contribute more money if I don't have to read another one that long.
Well, we're not asking for money, but we thank you for proclaiming Equal Pay Day in Flagler County. And this year we also are having the City of Flagler Beach, City of Bunnell, and the City of Palm Coast are going to proclaim Tuesday, April 2nd as Equal Pay Day in Flagler County. And I'm Mary Ann Clark, Public Policy Chair. Teresa Owen and Susie Baird, who are our co-presidents, Linda Russell and Kim Medley are faithful members. And we are having an unhappy hour. So I would like to invite you to,
Susan Baird is distributing payday candy bars, just as a little reminder that women earn less money than men for doing the same job.
There you go.
Yes,
I need to have the chairman sign it.
got it? And would you ladies, would you join us for a photo? We'll You okay?
Stand in front of you and you still can see over.
I can send one to you too. All right, is everybody ready? Here we go. I'm going to take a few. All smiles, all eyes open. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Stay well.
All right. Did we move to approve that yet? Move to approve the proclamation?
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to approve the proclamations. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes unanimously. Okay. Next, we have proclamation regarding Water Conservation Month, which is, we're designating that for April of 2019. And I think we have some folks from St. John's River Water Management District. Mr. Triano. And I'm going to ask Commissioner Mullins if you wouldn't mind reading that proclamation, please. Yeah.
How fitting I get to read about water and conservation. Let's get it right the first time and we can conserve. So a proclamation of Flagler County Board of County Commissioners designating April 29th as Water Conservation Month. Whereas water is a basic and essential need of every living creature. And whereas the state of Florida, water management districts, and Flagler County are working together to increase awareness about the importance of water conservation. And whereas Flagler County and the state of Florida have designated April, typically a dry month when water demands are most acute, Florida's Water Conservation Month, to educate citizens on how they can help save Florida's precious water resources. And whereas each year April is designated as Water Conservation Month in Florida, with this April 2019 marking its 21st anniversary. And whereas Flagler County has always encouraged and supported water conservation throughout various educational programs and special events. And whereas every business, industry, school, and citizen can make a difference when it comes to conserving water. Whereas every business, industry, school, and citizen can help by saving water and thus promote a healthy economy and community. Now, therefore, the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners do hereby proclaim the month of April 29th, 2019 as Water Conservation Month in Flagler County and call upon the citizens and the businesses in Flagler County to help protect this precious resource by practicing water-saving measures and becoming more aware of the need to conserve water. Adopted this 18th day of March 2019. Thank you.
Very good.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. My name is Jim Troiano. I'm Intergovernmental Coordinator for the St. John's River Water Management District. And on behalf of our district, the 4 other districts, all 5 districts in the state of Florida, the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, and then the American Water Works Association, we appreciate your leadership. We appreciate you considering to adopt this proclamation. Again, as the Commissioner Mullins read, 21st year. It's important. We've seen a lot of effort in our state recently about our water, and this is one way that we all can do it, not just from government, but from local businesses and residents to conserve water. Consider each time that you apply water and how we can save it. We're not making any new water, and we're having to be very creative in how we're able to issue water permits and different things along those lines to facilitate the growth that we see not only in this community but throughout the state of Florida. So thank you for your leadership and the cooperation that we continue to have between our district and this county, and we look forward to celebrating April as Water Conservation Month. Thank you very much.
Jim, have the proclamation there.
She should come up.
Yeah, would you like to come up?
All right, everybody ready? Here we go. Just a couple more. All smiles, eyes open. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, Jim, appreciate you, sir.
Would you like to make a motion to approve the proclamation, please?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the proclamation.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. That motion carries unanimously. Okay. We'll now move into our community outreach section of the agenda. The community outreach time is a 30-minute time period, which is allocated at the beginning of the meeting for public comment. Each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes to address the commission on any consent agenda item or other topics not on the agenda. Any speaker who is unable to speak within this community outreach period will be allowed to speak during the community outreach portion at the end of the meeting. So I'm declaring public comment open, and anyone that wishes to come forward, you're welcome to do so. And also, just as a reminder, please state your name and where you reside for the record. And you don't need to worry about that mic. We have a new mic, so it's on all the time. So welcome, sir.
Gotcha. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jared Maxwell. I am owner of Mad Dogs Flag Football of Palm Coast. And as I know, we're going to be able to meet come Saturday, game day.
Yes, sir.
We are very excited. I feel like I'm full of espresso every day here. I can't wait to get to the fields. Sorry. We started this back in June, and there was another flag football league here in town, Mosquito Sports, out of Orlando. They had 3 seasons a year. I was a coach in that league for 18 seasons, so I had 3 seasons a year in flag. I had 1 season in tackle with the Warriors with Steve Brandt. Our parents, our kids, our families in this county were sending over $30,000 each season to Orlando, and not a dollar of that was ever spent here. What these kids got as far as rewards for trophies, the lack of coaching, the lack of just not caring was evident. The writing was on the wall. The owner just set up a website, and he made a lot of money on this county. So one day in June, I started Mad Dogs. First season, we were expecting about 100 kids or so. Well, we're pushing 300 in our first. Absolute success. Mosquito Sports has pulled out of Flagler County. The amount of local businesses that we've gotten involved, local leadership, has been tremendous. It's unbelievable. The reason I'm here today is we need field space, okay? Our game field is at Wadsworth Park. It's a beautiful looking field when you're driving past. We've been practicing on that every night for a week. It's atrocious. There's some safety concerns that Frank Barbuti has addressed, filling some holes and this and that, but we are not stopping at 300 kids. We are looking for regional tournament play, county tournament. We're going to make this a big deal. Mad Dogs football will be a household name in this state within 5 years. That is our goal. We are actively searching ways that we can fund money to have our own practice facilities, indoor facilities, outdoor facilities. We got a call from the Philadelphia Eagles today. I almost cried. I'm a diehard Eagles fan. I saw that 215 number. I knew who it was. They want to help fund some money for us to help us out. It's not going to be a lot of money because we're outside their 100-mile realm, but they understand the need for it. We're just in an odd spot between Jacksonville, Tampa, and Miami where we're even outside their realm of that 100 miles where they don't want to help us. So any ideas that you guys have down the road, we are going to try to have this put on the agenda. This is something that's very serious. over 700 families are included in Mad Dogs right now, and we need some field space desperately. We have a lot of kids in this county, we know that, and a lot of schools in this county, we know that, but the lack of fields is hurting all soccer, lacrosse, baseball, softball, flag. It hurts us all. But with where we're going down the road, we do need our own field space, and we're going to figure out a way to achieve that goal. But I appreciate you guys taking on leadership role in this county. I definitely don't want that job, but you guys are doing an outstanding job. I appreciate you. Look forward to Saturday, and you guys have a good night. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jared.
Thank you.
All right. Next speaker, please. Mr. Davis, sir, how are you?
Pretty good. Name's Dan Davis, resident of Bunnell, Florida. I am here today representing the Tobacco-Free Flagler County Partnership. And I have also Troy Stone and Johnny and Connor here. They are with SWAT, which I believe some of you may be familiar with. Troy is the SWAT coordinator. If it's okay with you, I'm going to ask these guys to pass out a couple of handouts to you real quick. If you recall, a year or two ago, SWAT came by the commission here and pitched something called Tobacco 21. And that's a movement to,
And give one to our recorder over
actually
there.
require that the sale of tobacco products age be raised to 21. Well, that's pretty much a state issue right now. There's not a lot. We've found out there's not a lot a county or a city can do with that until the state takes more action on that. So today what we want to talk to you about is tobacco retail licensing. And if I could just, you can see that on your handout, but if I could just point out real quick exactly what a tobacco retail license, with the sale of e-cigarettes to minors is prohibited by Florida statute. There is no statewide mechanism to enforce compliance with this law. There are no restrictions on who can sell e-cigarettes or where they can be sold. But a local TRL can fix that problem. That would require retailers that sell e-cigarettes to abide by the same requirements and penalty structure as those that sell other tobacco products. And if I could just also read from the other handout real quick, just easier than me trying to explain it. A tobacco retail licensing law, so it would be an ordinance that you would pass. It gives a city or a county government the authority to require businesses that sell tobacco products to obtain a license from the government in exchange for the privilege of selling these products. On an annual basis, retailers must fill out an application, pay a predetermined fee, and meet any other requirements outlined in the ordinance. So folks, like I said, this is something that we can do at the county level. Tobacco's kind of taken a back seat to the opioid crisis here recently, but I want to tell you that kids are still getting addicted to nicotine. Today, it's more in the form of e-cigarettes and juuling. There's new ads out there talking about these products being better. Well, they're still nicotine, and kids are getting addicted to them. These kids can attest to the fact that 15 or 20 of them at a time are getting caught juuling. A lot of times, I think parents and staff don't realize the effects of these things. I heard something the other day. I know I'm out of time, but if I could just have maybe a minute or so.
Sure.
Just saw something from the health community recently that some of these nicotine oils, people are now buying them in bulk and they're filling them up and mixing them and selling them themselves. Well, so there's no control over how much nicotine is going into these products. And you can actually OD on nicotine. You can go to the emergency room for it. Used to it was just a cigarette, and now you can get so much more. So it's a big deal. And so what we're asking for is if you could direct staff to work with our partnership to draft up an ordinance for tobacco retail license. There's other counties out there that are doing it. So we can find a draft ordinance and work with your staff on that. But we would like to, come back at some point, be on an agenda with an ordinance for TRL.
Okay. All right.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, gentlemen. I was here last year after the Hammock Cup pickleball tournament.
You have to identify yourself.
Oh, I will do that.
Thanks.
My name is Walter Hooker. I live in the Hammock and am the tournament director for the Hammock Cup pickleball tournament. Last year and the year before, we presented the board with proceeds from the tournament. And this year, we are busting out at the seams. We had 80 players 2 years ago. Last year, we had 145. This year, right now, we have 241. And we're running out of space. We normally play at the courts, pickleball courts behind the Hammock Community Center. We call them the Malacompa courts. There's only 3. The county built them in 2016. There's 2 more at Old Dixie Park. That's the Horseshoe Park. And the 3 courts are used 7 mornings a week, 4 afternoons a week. I run 2 ladder leagues. And through Mr. Hansen's help and Matt, we are looking forward to more courts at that complex so we can host even bigger tournaments and have sports, pickleball sports competitions there. I've helped the city of Palatka just this month. They had a tournament. They had 202 players. I thought they were going to beat us, but right now I think we'll still have the biggest tournament north of Daytona Beach. And then I'm also helping 2 other groups, one for a tournament in the fall sometime in Flagler Beach, and another tournament at Treaty Park in St. Augustine on the first week of November. So I would just ask for your support for pickleball in the county. We have 30 courts in the area, 5 of them the county provided. The city has a number, and private gated communities have some. But we need more courts, just like flag football. Sports is busting out at the seams. And I just wanted to say one more thing. That we appreciate your support, and we can't wait to see the new courts out there. Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Commissioner, I'm sorry. Sure, go ahead.
Just so everybody knows, we've done the survey of the land around the 3 courts. We don't know whether we're going to add 15 or 12 more courts. We're not sure yet. The soil samples, we've taken core samples, and those are being looked at right now. As soon as we get that back, then we can start planning where the courts can go. So we're making progress. I know it's not as fast as you'd like, but we're making progress.
Well, we'd like to see them next year for next year's tournament, but we'll wait and see.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you,
sir. Next speaker, please. Afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Jim Olsemer. I've been chairman of the Board of Trustees at the County Library for approximately the last 10 years or so. Speaking on my own, the issue I just want to talk about came to light after our last board meeting. But just a little background. As you all know, the library's been through some rough times since the big recession hit. We were, as did the rest of the county, we suffered a lot of reductions in funding. We also got slammed with a $225,000 a year permanent reduction in state aid. But, we weathered that and, kind of took our medicine along with everyone else. And a few years ago, as things started to get a little bit brighter, we embarked upon some plans for the future. And one of them was to build a new library branch in the southern part of the county, which is currently underserved. And this was approved by the Board of Trustees and County Administration and Library Administration. And one of the pieces of the puzzle is pursuit of a construction grant. And our library director was so successful in filing this grant that 2 years in a row we were at the top. Now, that could be due to her excellent grant preparation, or really it has to do with the fact that we were obviously number one in need. Now, it's come to my attention that, there's a stipulation on this that you got to spend it in a certain amount of time. And I am quite well aware of the problems that you guys are facing with Sheriff's Operations Center, the water in Plantation Bay, and myriad other issues, not to mention the problems with affecting safety and security of the current library. But, it's really discouraging that after all these years, we've got about the lowest unemployment rate I've ever seen. Property values are going up, and I hate to see the library pushed back not to the back of the line, pushed further back. And so I realize there's no money, but somehow I know public safety is the number one thing that you do, but there are other things that we also have to take care of for our citizens. And I hope that money is available next year, but it might not be. But to me, it's a sad state of affairs that we might have to turn down a $500,000 grant because we can't move forward to build a new library, which we really do need. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jim.
Right on time.
Thank you. Okay. Any other speakers?
Oops, there you go.
Good evening. My name is James Bellino. I live here in Palm Coast, and I pastor a church by the name of Church on the Rock in Bunnell. And it's funny to follow somebody, a proponent for the library, because I think the library has been a focus point recently of the homeless crisis that we're experiencing in Flagler County. And I kind of got thrust into the forefront of this recently because of the efforts that we've made as a faith-based community to help those that are in need of it, or those that are at the lowest point in our societal structure. And I truly believe that we can do this as a faith-based community with the support of government. I've met with some of the officials here in the council that have decided that they want to partner with us. They say, bring a proposal and to solve the issue. And I'm a businessman at heart, and I'm trying to figure out, how do I figure out the problems of the county when I don't know all the county resources and everything that they have to offer? We desire to we have to fix this together. Government's not going to fix it. The people of this county have to come together and have a decide to do something in regard with the homeless at this point. But calling them vagrants and demonizing a part of our society and ostracizing them and saying we just need to get them out of the county or somewhere else and push them somewhere else doesn't solve a problem. We need to come together as people and as human beings and help them and go through all the processes that we need to do to get them back into society for those that choose, get them the mental help that they need for those that are addicted. And there are some that are going to be incorrigible that we have to deal with. But they're still going to be here whether we try to push them to another county, give that problem to somebody else. We have to embrace that today. I'm shocked when somebody would tell me that we need to cease and desist, that we are enabling this population by giving them food or a shower or clean clothes to wear. My family struggled when I was a kid, when my father went bankrupt and we had to have people help us. Otherwise, I would have been homeless too. But to be told that I'm an enabler, I use the analogy, do we shut down our methadone clinics and take the Vicodin off the streets of the sheriffs because that enables the addicted person to overdose and come back to life and do it again? We can do better. But it takes a county that cares, a city that cares to be a part of that. And I want to be a part of the solution. I don't want to feel like, hey, you're part of the problem, when all our heart is to help. I'm an advocate for those that don't have a voice, for the unborn, for those that are on the marginalized parts of society. But for most part, I'm a businessman. I'm a small business owner. I want this county to thrive, a place that people can come and be proud of. I know we can do better. I hope that's our job. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yeah, don't- Any other speakers?
Jane Gentile, Plantation Bay. I would just like to there are a lot of our neighbors here today who have not been to previous commission meetings. So I just want to make an announcement that please don't go away like they did last time. It might be quite a while until we get to the wastewater issue. So I just want to make that announcement to my neighbors. Please don't go away early. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Patrick Sullivan. I live at 1227 Hampstead Lane, and it was an accident that I'm following this lady here. I just bought into Plantation Bay the end of last year, and this whole water sewer situation was totally foreign to me. I just hope I didn't make a bad decision by buying into Plantation Bay until those items can be fixed. Thank you.
Any other speakers?
I'm sorry. My name is Denise Calder.
Hold on, Denise. Please come up to the mic first. Thank you. Just want to make sure we get you on there.
No problem. My name is Denise Calder, a Palm Coast resident, an enabler, and I'm proud to say that. However, I'm one of the ones who are helping to lead the charge to go from a culture of an enablement to a culture of transformation. And, I'm willing to offer volunteer services to help create a proposal that's going to bring our community together as opposed to creating conflict and competition, because we cannot afford to compete against Volusia County government. And all of our shared services are Volusia Flagler, just like we have Plantation Bay as Volusia and Flagler. Half of it is in Volusia and half of it's in Flagler. And we have that major issue. We have the same issue as far as homelessness and issues accordingly. And I know the experts, they run their programs, but the citizens and the county are not coming together with our own citizens and our, government, and or at least not in a productive fashion. The Public Safety Coordinating Council is the avenue, and any proposal that comes forward, they should be providing the oversight of any different proposals, since they have everybody at the table, the powers that be, and have representatives. And over the years, when the county has written grants, that has been social service grants, that has been the avenue to provide that oversight and accountability, and that is what's missing in this issue. We support the library's cause, support the library growing and growing for the future, since they're also going to be an adjunct senior center. All of this plays its part. Our part, or the Family Matters of Flagler, we secured $750,000 grant 2 years ago to build 6 units of affordable housing. And due to impact fees and due to the county's outdated affordable housing comp plan, we were unable to secure any kind of match dollars, to build 6 units, so at least get 6 families, permanent housing here. And we couldn't get the right people to the table. Now that the crisis has gone to the point where it is, now's the time to act. The Chinese symbol is crisis and opportunity together, and this is the perfect point. So now we have to go forward with synergy. I have submitted a draft proposal, for a collaborative effort that provides co-coordinated, co-located services where everybody can communicate, so the 4 C's in collaboration. And hopefully it can be modeled after the Carver Gym and have interlocal agreements and actually just holding people accountable, and that includes county staff as well. Thank you very much.
Excuse me. Thank you, Denise.
Evening, Commissioners. Dennis McDonald. Since we're on the issue of homelessness, you've seen me stand here many times advocating for something to be done about the sheriff's headquarters. And so now for 18 months, the sheriff has been homeless. So what I'm asking this commission is to get on with it, get our sheriff a new building, and put this thing to rest. Certainly, I've sent all of you some information recently as far as the certificate of occupancy is concerned on that building, and I intend to follow through on it, and so does John Ruffalo. We did pass along the information to all of you on our, I'm sure you've seen the attachment that was at the bottom, which was the letter that we finally got back from the DOJ. This thing has been all the way up. They have it in their file. They have chosen not to do anything at this particular point, but I'm sure that once we get into the deposition stage on the civil matters here, there'll be something that will come that will flip the switch, and hopefully we can get the DOJ to act on it. So, but in the meantime, could we please fix the sheriff and take him out of the homeless category? Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Any other comments? Okay, seeing no one approach the podium, I'll close the public comment section. And we will move into our, in terms of just a couple of things with regards to some of the comments, has Parks and Rec worked with the Flag Football League in terms of space, Mr. Cameron?
I have not worked with them to this point. I've had pretty robust programs in both pickleball and flag football in previous positions, so I look forward to the opportunity to sit down with them.
Okay, and I would also suggest that they reach out to the city as well, because there's fields throughout the county, and they're not just all county property too. So if there's a way that they can coordinate with them, their Parks and Rec, I think that would be, a wise move on their part from a space standpoint. They may not know that, but so.
I look forward to those discussions.
And I'm not, with respect to tobacco-free Florida and the local legislation, I don't know what, I guess confused would be the right word on that, because I'm sure there's probably preemption from the state side or going to be, or there's movement afoot that way. So I'm just not sure, how we would react to that. Care to comment, Ms. Stengel? Oh, and by the way, let me welcome you, Ms. Stengel. Mr. Hadid is excused this evening, and he's ably replaced for tonight.
Just for tonight.
By Kate Stengel.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
I would recommend that the tobacco issue be reviewed by the county attorney's office so that they can explore whether there are any issues that would need to be, such as preemption, need to be reviewed before bringing forward a proposal. So why don't we leave that with the county attorney's office to review to see if it is plausible.
And as far as coming back on a full-blown, presentation, we're open to that, rather than just having 3 minutes. We understand. I understand from Mr. Davis that was your original approach here, but you're all welcome to work with staff, and maybe we can have it as a full agenda item. But we also, for sure, want to talk to the county attorney about that as well. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
if they do have some model legislation that we could take a look at, that would be helpful.
Yes, sir. I was going to say the same thing. Thank you for bringing that up. Mm-hmm. Okay. I think that's it as far as the comments go in terms of discussion points. So unless commissioners, you had anything else with respect to that?
No, not right now.
Okay. All right. So we will move forward with our consent agenda. And I will ask if, starting with you, Commissioner Erickson, if you have anything you would like to have pulled from the agenda?
None.
Okay. Commissioner Hanson?
None. None.
Sullivan?
None.
Commissioner Mullins?
None.
None, and the chair has none. So that being the case, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
I can make a motion that consent agenda items 6A, 6B, 7A, 7B, 7C, 7D, and 7E. I'm putting forward a motion to approve those.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda, all items currently on there. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none, so that motion carries unanimously. We will move on to general business. Item 8A, I will read it. It's consideration of appointment or reappointment to the Library Board of Trustees. And it's a request that the board consider either the reappointment of Mr. Alan Peterson or the appointment of Mr. Bernard Barzak or Ms. Jeannie Bond to the Library Board of Trustees for a 3-year term. And I believe, Commissioners, we have a voting sheet here, right?
Yes,
Correct,
sir.
Ms. Christie? So we need to do that.
Mr. Chairman, I always like to ask if any of the possible noms are here today. They might want to just stand so we can recognize them.
I apologize. Thank you.
Ms. Bond, do you have anything you want to say? Okay.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bond. Okay.
I'd just like to give them a chance.
Had to make sure I gave you the right one.
Commissioners Christy Mayer, County Administration Offices, and I have the ballots from tonight for the appointment to the Library Board of Trustees, and the majority vote was for Mr. Bernard Barziak.
Okay. All right, well, congratulations, sir, and thank you, Ms. Bond, for coming this evening, and for Mr. Peterson for his long service on the board as well. So I think we need a motion to ratify that.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the appointment of Mr. Bernard Barzak to the Library Board of Trustees.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none. That motion carries unanimously. Okay, item 8B under general business is consideration of appointment or reappointment to the Airport Advisory Board, and the request is the board either consider the reappointment of Mr. Kurt Schneider or the appointment of either Mr. Jack Howell or Mr. P. Wayne Harrison or Mr. Edward S. Hill to the Airport Advisory Board for a 3-year term. Any of those folks here this evening?
Yes, Commissioner, we do have a couple of the gentlemen here if they'd like to just come forward and introduce themselves.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, my name is Philip Wayne Harrison, and I've recently moved from Stamford, Connecticut to Palm Coast, and I would like to be appointed to the Airport Advisory Commission or the Advisory Board.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Anybody else? Nope.
Good evening. My name is Edward Hill. You have my qualifications in the application that I filed. I am interested in becoming involved and helping out.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hill. Okay, I think with that we should vote.
That's it. Commissioners, again, Christy Mayer, County Administration. The votes were 3 votes for Mr. Harrison and 1 for Mr. Snyder and 1 for Mr. Howell.
Okay, so it looks like Mr. Harrison is appointed, and again, thank you to everybody else for applying. Entertain a motion, Commissioners?
So moved to approve Mr. Harrison for the Airport Advisory Board.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. Excuse me? Public comment on these items?
Any public comment?
Usually.
I didn't think that we normally had public comment on those. No. Okay. Okay.
A dog does.
Dog wants to come.
And Commissioners, let's make sure that we vote in the microphone so it gets recorded, because I think sometimes we're not quite capturing all that, correct? Okay, all right. All right, item 8C, Item 8C is application 3168, which is adoption of a resolution to vacate a portion of the plat of Daytona North, parcel number listed on our agenda, and it's at 5879 Walmart Avenue. The petitioner is Kevin A. Peck and Renee Grenier. And Mr. Mengel, how are you this evening?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Adam Mengel, Planning Director. Very good, sir. I've got the graphic showing here on the monitors, also within your packet, and this request only vacates that common blanket easement, that's 5-foot wide drainage and utility easement between lots 2 and 3 in Block 49 in Daytona North. And so this specific request, you've seen these before, this allows that owner then to come back in with a binding lot instrument through the public records, build across that common lot line. It's for your consideration. We did provide notice and have had no any inquiry had come in on this related to this request. With that, I'll close and await any questions or comments.
Commissioners, any questions or comments for Mr. Mengel on this item?
None from me.
I have none.
None, okay. Somebody want to make a motion, and then I can...
This would be public comment, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we do need public comment on this one.
No, I know. I thought I was...
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve application 3168, adoption of a resolution to vacate a portion of the plat of Daytona North, parcel number as stated, and to vacate that easement between the two plots.
I apologize. I jumped the gun on asking for the motion. Should have went to public comment first, so I apologize. Any public comment on item 8C? Okay, seeing none, I will close public comment and bring it back for a motion. I apologize, Commissioner.
Do it again.
Please.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve application 3168, adoption of a resolution to vacate a portion of the plat of Daytona North, parcel number as stated in the application.
Okay, we have a motion on the item. We have a second. Any additional discussion by the board? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. And that motion carries unanimously. Okay. Item 8D. This is another vacation, which is application number 3170, adoption of a resolution to vacate a portion of the map of Favoretta, portion of partial number as detailed in our agenda, which is 131 County Road 200, and the petitioner is Mr. Marcus C. Strickland, Jr. Mr. Mengel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is one of the pieces that have been previously part of Mr. Strickland's 1990-1991 rezoning action, where it had gone from, these lands had gone from agriculture to R1. One of the requirements, a prerequisite for the rezoning, was that future actions would require a replatting or a vacation. And so this request, you've seen a few of these also come through in a piecemeal fashion as these sales are intended to occur. This parcel, there is a deed prepared, there's a seller or there's a purchaser that's out there, and then wanting to proceed further with an annexation into the city of Bunnell. One of the city's requirements is that the county complete the plat vacation prior to the annexation occurring. We're in favor of this approach. It is consistent with the original zoning action, and we would ask that the board approve the resolution. This vacates only that portion of the map of Favoretta underlying this parcel as outlined in red. It does not deprive any other neighboring parcel of any access and does not then affect any utilities. You have the consents from utility companies provided as part of your packet. With that, I'll close again. I'll wait any questions or comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions from the board?
No.
Okay, no questions. I'll open this one up to public comment. Anyone wish to comment on item 8D? Seeing no one approach the podium, I'll close public comment, bring it back to the board. Final questions or comments or a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve application 3170, adoption of a resolution to vacate a portion of the map of Favoretta, a portion of parcel number as stated in the application.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. That motion carries unanimously. Okay. We will move to our added agenda items, and we will start with item, which is now known as item 8E. Let me just get the, yep, that's the library, but hold on, let me get it here. Okay. This is ratification of the Flagler County Library Facility Rules and Code of Conduct Policy. Mr. Cameron, are you taking this one? Or somebody else?
All he can do.
Good evening, Ms. Holly.
Good evening, Commissioners. Holly Albanese, Library Director. The Facility Rules and Code of Conduct, it's an annual review of policies. We did add to this policy this past year so that people would feel safer coming to library after hours of operation. So we added that safe zone so that nobody could just linger on library property after hours of operation. Outside of that, most of the facility rules are similar to what we've had in the past and very similar to what other libraries do for their code of conduct. If you have any questions.
Commissioners?
I'd just like to say.
Go ahead, Commissioner Sullivan.
Yeah, I'm on the library board, and I was there when we approved these rules earlier this week. I think it's one of three things that we're doing tonight concerning the library. The first was in the consent agenda, we approved the security cameras for $35,000, and the interesting point there is most or all of that money is coming from the what we down knew the library does passports, and that results in a net profit for the library. So that $35,000 camera system, security camera system that we approved, comes out of that money. And the other thing, recently Mr. Cameron can mention this about the security guard we've put in place at the library. You might want to just talk briefly about that. So with this, the new code of conduct, which gives us a kind of a green line around the library, and those other two items, we're trying to do what we can to make sure our library stays viable and without interfering really with the homeless issue.
Commissioner Mullins?
Yeah, I do. I want to say this real quick. That I certainly, as a lot of you guys know, feel the need for security there. When me and the county manager went out and saw some of the pictures and some of the video and heard from some of the stories, I immediately felt this is something we should do. Our manager said it would be Monday before he could act on it, and we, through a donation that I did to the library, the Friends of the Library, we had security out there that week, and thank God we did, because it was some stuff that went on out there that was unbelievable. So I realize about helping people. I realize about trying to give a hand out or a hand up, but at the end of the day, I want to make sure that our people are safe and the residents here are safe and public safety. And I really feel strongly that this is something that needs to occur. Thank you.
Any other comments, Commissioners? No questions? Mr. Cameron?
Yes, in response to Commissioner Sullivan, I was called to the library on the Thursday, I believe, before we actually placed a security guard. I was presented with evidence that told me that I had a situation that couldn't be ignored, that we could have ended up with a serious situation at any point. I don't think that there's any purpose served in me going into graphic detail about what I was confronted with out there, but I decided that a critical situation existed. The safety of employees and patrons was in question, and I used my authority to place a security guard there. I think the guard actually arrived on Tuesday morning, and I'm handling that on my own authority unless I should approach a point that the cost of a security guard should exceed my authority. And at that time, I would come back to you and ask for funding if the security guards should still be needed there. I do understand that situation has improved at the library as far as the public feeling that they were comfortable in coming in with a security guard there. And I understand from my library director that the employees are feeling much more secure with the security guard in place. Happy to answer any other questions.
I do want to reiterate one thing. Just Sunday, the individual that was trespassed on Saturday that we put the sheriff's office there, he was arrested for a very disturbing assault at 4 a.m, trying to steal cigarettes, and the officer confronted him and it got very aggressive. That's the kind of situation that is going on up there that needs to end.
Any other questions from commissioners? Not, I'll open it up to public comment on item 8E. Anyone from the public wish to comment on item 8E? And let's please make sure we keep our comments germane to the rules and the code of conduct policy here. Thank you. Sir?
Chair, my name is Benjamin Bellumer. I'm pretty new to the county. I live in Palm Coast. I don't even know where this library is. I hear about it all the time. I hear all the horror stories. I haven't heard one good thing about it. Don't know where it is. Don't care where it is. I'm not going. My 6th kid is due next month. I will never take my kids there. One thing I do want to say as a former U.S. Marine and a police officer, you can ratify the code of conduct all you want, but if it's not strictly enforced, it's not going to do anybody a darn bit of good. I am not a proud enabler. I just wanted to say that out loud. There are multiple ways to handle the situation that's going on there, and handouts and hand-ups are two different things. But again, it's all about enforcement. If you're going to ratify this, I don't know how to ensure that. That's your job. But maybe someday one of my kids or grandkids and I can go to the library if you guys do this right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Any other comments on this item 8E? Seeing no one approach the podium, I'll close public comment. Bring it back to the board for a motion.
Make a motion that we approve item 8E, ratification of the Flagler County Public Library Facility Rules and Code of Conduct Policy.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, none. The motion carries unanimously. Item 8F is consideration of approval for design of Phase 2 of the Plantation Bay wastewater treatment facility improvements. And Mr. Cameron, who's taking this one?
Hey.
Good evening, Ms. Al-Khatib.
Good evening, Faith Al-Khatib, County Engineer. As we all know, that Plantation Bay wastewater treatment plant is currently under FDEP consent order, which requires Flagler County to make modification to the existing system to meet Class 1 reliability and also to include construction of a reject storage tank. Initially, the construction plans to address all these concerns in 2017 were prepared. An invitation to bids was advertised on 2017. We received the bids on May 2017. All these bids received exceeded the project budget. After discussion with FDEP, the county modified the project scope of construction into 2 phases. Phase 1, which is the construction improvements, included building 1 million gallon per day reject concrete tank, master pump station, piping, and other safety improvements, which has been approved by the board April 2nd, 2018 meeting. Construction activities remain ongoing and planned for completion by August 2019. During the Phase 1 construction period, in August, observation indicates the existing treatment tank walls are weakening. At this time, efforts are underway to finish a temporary solution. Phase 2, which is completion of additional improvement, construction of a new 0.475 million gallon per day treatment facility and replacement of existing treatment tank, along with installing additional blowers, yard piping, and electrical systems. On the board discussion at April 4th, 2019, Commission meeting identified the goal to expedite the design phase for this phase. And we are here requesting your approval to move forward with the design for Phase 2. I do have with me Kimberly Horn Lewis. He's the engineer of record for this project, and we are here to answer any of your questions.
Commissioners?
I'd kind of like to hear from Mr. Horn.
No, I do. I want to say one thing. This, in a little over 30 days, the focus group brought this attention out. And you guys, Faith, you guys and your crew and the county manager, I really commend y'all on quickly reacting and reprioritizing and moving this to the top level. Y'all have done a great job. And the focus group that meets has, they've asked for just a few things, just transparency through the process to let them know what's going on, speed, let's get this thing resolved so we don't have a disaster down there, and then just fixing it the right way. This is we want a long-term solution, no patches, no temporary things, but with the process of what you just spoke of, y'all, this is the focus that we're doing, and I just want to commend you for moving as quick as you did with this.
Thank you. And at this time, as I mentioned, we almost finalized the scope of work, and the PO with the engineer here is not going to be approximately, it's going to be $150,000, and we are anticipating to finish the design phase by June. So he promised he can deliver by that time. At this time, we need to look into the construction funding and to see how we can proceed with that.
The other thing with the construction, the group was very boisterous about looking to loans, grants, but not going near the water bill cost because it's been going up steadily. So I think these are things we discuss and kind of go out, but I do want to report that back as a responsibility of that group. I want to be their voice and report that back.
And we communicated with FDEP if we can get a loan from them, and they said if we get the design done by June, we can submit an application and receive a loan, and it will be for approximately 20 years, and at this time, the interest rate is 1.06%.
That's great. Who says government can't move fast?
Any other comments or questions, commissioners? I have one, Faith. The DEP consent order says for Phase 2, this needs to be construction completed by 7/31/2022. So this is the start. This is the design side for Phase 2.
Correct.
Do we still, at this point, stand to be able to meet that schedule?
Yes, definitely. I think if we proceed with the design phase right now, get it done by June, we'll be expediting the schedule. We'll be ahead of schedule.
I mean, obviously, we have hurdles to overcome here in terms of financing and the actual construction side, but at this point, where we stand today is we will be able to meet that consent agreement by 7/31/2022.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Just one comment that the other action we took as a result of our last meeting was we did get a request into our state legislature for additional funding for this project, and it got on our priority list of projects for this coming year. So we're hoping that some of that money will result from that request.
Always our preferred option to go over grants. If it's not working out, we'll go over, get some loans at this time. We do have a cost estimate, but the estimate is an estimate until we advertise for the project and we receive the bids for it.
And I apologize, Commissioners, the deadlines on Phase 1, we're on track to meet that for completion of construction as well, correct?
Correct. It's going to be completed by August 1st of this fiscal year. Yes, 2019. Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay.
Now, just go back to what you said. You said if we begin it in June, you feel there's a good chance we could be finished 1 year later.
Correct. What's happening, coordinating with FDEP, if we are getting a loan from them, they told us if we finalize the design by June, submit an application for the loan, yes.
Great. Good job.
So I have one more.
Okay.
Chairman, and that is the change that has occurred because of what we've found with the wastewater part of the plan is we're delaying, we've kind of backed off from the water, the drinking water side of the project. Is that correct?
At this time, as you know, we advertise for RO system. We receive the bids. It's still the bids in good condition until the board make a decision. We do have $2 million grant from DEP towards the RO system or towards the water treatment plant. So we did request another 90 days to keep the bids, to extend the bids, and soon we'll be coming back to you to decide if you want us to award the project or whatever you decide how to proceed.
Okay. If we don't have any other comments from the board at this point or questions, I'll open it up to public comment. And again, please limit your comments to this particular agenda item, which is the approval of the design of Phase 2 of the wastewater plant.
Good evening. Lisa Hill, 621 Elk River Drive. I just want to add that I'm already at Plantation Bay, so I don't have the choice as the gentleman at the library of easily leaving. But I do have a family member who was interested in exploring moving here and was going to make a trip here in the spring. And I told her not to come because I'm that concerned. It's my understanding that the wastewater tank can literally fail at any minute. And we're talking about complying with the consent order by 2022. So what's the plan if it fails tomorrow or the next week or 6 months from now? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
Jane Gentile, Youth, Plantation Bay. Joan Affatato is not able to be here today, and I really hope you might let me go over the 3 minutes. I'd like to ask I'd like this.
No sharing of time, okay? It's 3 minutes.
Sure. Just we vote for you, and then you give us 3 minutes, and you work for us. Real joke. Aeromod is a company who builds wastewater tanks. You all, and Mr. Mullins, you all got a bid for $1.8 million installed. If you want to buy a car, do you go and do you ask someone to design you a car? People build cars. This company has submitted a bid, $1.8 million installed. They're willing to come to town to speak and meet with you. You okayed before talking about paying a consultant. Nobody is mentioning the money. Nobody is mentioning who has to pay. We have a petition here, and Mr. Chairman, we have turned in 131. They're scanned in the record, but I have to distribute. That were done in 3 days that say, don't charge us a dime more. We already in debt $6 million, $807,000 for consultants. We don't need consultants. You don't get a consultant when you want to buy a car. You go out to a car dealer and buy a car. Dennis McDonald was diligent enough and met with, I believe, Jerry Cameron. Aeromod is a company in, I think, Kansas, wherever. They will come here, advertise a bid right now for people to install, to build and install. We don't need to design. This is nonsense. We have an engineering department. I am willing to sit down. I know Faith for many years. She's doing her best. There are companies out there. You don't need to waste our money. Right now, we have turned in 131 signatures. 238 homes have been approved by DEP, the same DEP that has a consent order that tells us our wastewater tank is no good. But yet they keep approving new construction. So our petition says no construction, nothing, no new permits for water. The permits that are already in effect, we can't stop the 97 now, even though the former administrator didn't even fill out the form correctly. It's in violation of Statute 403 and Statute 120. We really are approaching a criminal investigation. You need to amend this. We don't need a design. You need a bid to get people here who already build the tanks. 1.8 million, never mind this consulting nonsense. This is absurd. We've been going on this 6 years, and you never bother to tell the world that you're going to make decisions and you're going to charge us. You're not going to raise our rate, Mr. Mullins, but you're going to sign a bill that we're going to have to pay. This is outrageous.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay. Seeing no one approach the podium, I'll close public comment. Questions?
I'd like to approach the podium.
Okay.
Have the sheriff
My
move
name
them
is
out.
John Zetrow. I live in Plantation Bay. I moved here about 3 years ago, unbeknownst about the water situation. Then I learned about it. 3 years. You guys weren't. A couple of you were here 3 years ago. You haven't done anything. You wasted time. I mean, this is water. It's essential to us. And wastewater, that's going to destroy a lot of farmland, a lot of value. That's crazy. Why gamble? I mean, the lady just got through saying there's a company out there that can actually come in. It's not going to cost us anything to listen. If you guys keep an open mind, you might find a solution that's quicker than 2 years. I mean, come on, I don't even give my dog the water from the tap, and that's sad. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Folks, this is the last time I'm going to ask. We're wasting time. We waste other people's time with the clapping, and it really has no effect, zero effect. So if it makes you feel good, it just doesn't serve any purpose, and it's in violation of our rules. So I'm going to ask you to please refrain from doing that. Thank you. Sir?
Yes, my name is Fred Manzillo, 32 Landings Lane in Plantation Bay. I was here when the county and the city of Brunel bought the utility and sat in this chamber listening to the promises back then. Just like this gentleman said, nothing has really taken place. A lot of valuable time has been wasted. We appreciate Mr. Mullins' efforts as our new commissioner for our district. We're hoping that the 4 other commissioners will back him up as well and push forward something that is essential to us. This wastewater catastrophe needs to be addressed immediately. To say that we're on target for 2022, that's unreasonable. We really do need to push forward a little bit quicker than that, and to have a company that is available to go forward with this bid that you all received for $1.8 million, which we actually have. We could actually get that money and utilize it correctly. And to have this linger on and say, well, we're on target. I heard that before, and I see many of my neighbors here now. We're very frustrated, and Plantation Bay has grown. It has grown tremendously since 2010. We doubled in size, and we're going to continue growing. But if you let a catastrophe happen, that will not happen. And there goes your tax roll, because we'll become wasteland there. And, the county depends on our taxes to continue on going. So please support Mr. Mullins and his efforts, and please support the residents down in Plantation Bay. We really do need your help. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other speakers on this item?
Dennis McDonald. The reason I got involved in this is because in 2013, I stood in this very room, and the only person who was on the commission at the time that bought this thing is Charlie. Charlie said no. Okay, now, the point I'd like to make is that the reason that we own this right now is that it was a 3-2 vote. Okay, it was Revels, McLaughlin, and Hans that voted this thing in. I went back to the next meeting, and I publicly asked George Hans to reverse his vote because this was a bad deal. Well, boy, it's really proven itself to be a bad deal. So most recently, the thing that really got me wound up is the fact is that I found out from Joe Navatato that there's $807,000 involved in fees and studies since the county has owned this. Gentlemen, that's unacceptable. And let me just say that I come from a very different viewpoint than anybody does in this room. I've built a $500,000 plant, and I've paid for it as the developer. And I'm telling you, it doesn't have to be this hard. And this game that's played with all these consultants and such, gentlemen, it's really worthless. They don't back anything up. They don't guarantee anything. Okay? When I did business, I said directly to the manufacturer, can you guarantee this and put this in writing, and you're willing to back it up with a bond? And he said, yeah, he would. Okay, all these guys come in and they throw fluff out is what's going on. And all it does is waste time. It doesn't get you anywhere. So if you look at the consent order that's been in place now since the property was bought, okay, we've made no progress in all those years. I was amazed when Jane asked me about this. That I asked her, well, have they made any progress in anything? Zero. As a matter of fact, it seems to have gone backwards. So I'm just asking you, don't vote on this thing. Don't spend any more money on another study. $800,000 is a lot of money for studies. And, you have something. And I'm not saying that I just reached out to Aeromod because they built my plant. Okay. And they quickly came up with this package and sent it. They'll send somebody here in a couple weeks. The guy's a PhD and he's a PE. So all I'm saying is that maybe you need to take some input from some different places, and please don't waste any more money for these people. It was a bad deal in 2013, and I'm sorry I had to come back and tell you that. Thanks.
Any other speakers?
New face. I'm Marianne Redden, and I live in Plantation Bay. And I am a recent retiree, and I am shocked by what's going on down here. I specifically asked when we bought our home if there were any problems with the water, and I was told no. And I can't believe that I'm standing here having to argue for clean water and getting wastewater that works. I've been a part of a very large corporation most of my career, and I know how slow the wheels can turn when you've got committees that meet and people that have to study and all the rest of it. And I could tell you, most of the people on my block are retirees that are not necessarily well connected with social media so that they find out what's going on. So I'm going to take it as my personal crusade to make sure that the word gets out, that people realize what a crisis it's in. And it's unfortunate that when you think, I'm moving to Florida, I'm going to have my dream home, I'm going to have it in this beautiful community, and all this happens. I should be sitting on my back porch tonight having a glass of wine. Instead, I'm here arguing for water. I have traveled to India in my business travels, and I can tell you it's comparable. You go and you turn on the water faucet in India, and it has the same color as my water faucet here. I'm in the United States. I can't believe that this is what's happening here in this county. And so, like I say, I'm going to make it my personal business to spread the information and get people involved because they just don't know. I've talked to some of my neighbors, they, I hear something about water, but I just don't really understand it. And I have been spending hours and hours reading Nextdoor app, trying to understand what's been written in the newspaper, and it's very confusing. But I could tell you that after listening to Joe Mullins this morning, I understand it a lot better. And I really think it's a crisis that you gentlemen need to address now. You want to have a big environmental crisis down here? No one's going to want to move to Florida. Florida is already known for having some problems with its water, but I never expected this. So I thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Any other speakers on this item? Okay, seeing no one approach the podium, I will close public comment on item 8F. Any comments or questions?
Chair, I do have a comment, a couple of them real quick. Number one, this is to the county manager. Have you looked or have you had an opportunity, and I totally forgot to say these earlier, to look into the tank options that they're talking about that was presented, and do you have a comment on them if you have?
I have had the opportunity to meet with some of the residents. I've also had the opportunity to meet with Mr. McDonald. He referred this company to me. We played telephone tag a couple of times. I do understand they're coming to town. Absolutely, if they come in and they have an option that is that cheap that will do this job quicker, we would certainly call a special meeting and proceed with to present that to you at least. The problem that we have is that when I reviewed all of this, it is absolutely critical that we move forward. Now, we can stop that at any point if something really better comes up, but this isn't consulting on this. This is a design. This is an engineering effort that is absolutely necessary should we have to go down the road of building one. I would welcome a $1.8 million solution. I am told by people that have been in the utility business for a long time, utility engineers, that you can expect a cost on the low end of $8 a gallon, or you can have a cost on the high end of $13 a gallon to build one of these, and that's way out of range on this particular $1.8 million proposal. There's a lot that goes into this. There's approvals on a lot of different levels to get this in place, and that is the duty of the design company that will give us one that will meet all of those approvals. I welcome the input. I thank Mr. McDonald for his input to me, but at the end of the day, I can't, in good conscience, hold this up when I know that I have a tank that is structurally questionable, and I have a consent order that has been delayed a couple of times already and could put us into serious jeopardy with this situation. We have no redundancy out there. If that facility fails, we have a major, major problem, and I don't even want to comprehend what it would take to address that.
My second one would be, and this would be you, Faith, and to the county manager. As we move forward, we really need to look, from what I've gotten from all the evaluations, the tours, the professionals that have been there, we need to take some precautions to prevent or minimize a disaster like retention or a berm or a ditch, whatever needs to occur. And again, I heard you say a year. I didn't hear 2 years, 22. I heard we've got until that time, but I heard a year. I don't care which process that's there, and I think I can speak for the group in saying this. I don't think that it doesn't matter which process. It just needs to be a good fix, not a Band-Aid, not a system that, I hear myself, I can hear my mother in my ears, you get what you pay for. And if that system checks out to be okay, look into it. If it doesn't, then my God, fix it right so we don't revisit this thing.
Faith Al-Khatib, County Engineer. We are one team here. I just want to let the resident know that I'm not aware of the 1.8 million proposal and what has been included in that proposal. This information never came to me. I do know through the process we have to create a design and we have to get a permit and we have to a permit from DEP. We have to advertise for this service to meet the statute requirement. And the lower bidder, we award the project to them. At this time, I don't know if the resident, they know what we are including within this project. As you mentioned, we are not doing a temporary fix. We are going to do a long-term fix. We are building 2 water treatment tanks there for $500,000 gallon each. Also, we are doing electrical improvement there. At least $1 million electrical improvement we need to do there. Some piping, some pumps. There is a lot of things going on. It has to be part of this project. And we are not going to be doing a small project at this time and then within 5 years or 6 years, again, we'll be meeting here and talking about another phase of this project. So including or doing phase 2, we will be done and will be ultimate ready for 1 million gallon treatment tank for the whole community out there. So I don't know what the proposal, is it apple to apple or orange to apple? I don't know. I don't know what was included in the scope of work, but also if they would like to share that with us, or if you move on with the design and get this project permitted, I will be more than happy to get my bid $1.8 million instead of $7 million or $8 million or $10 million. That will be great for everybody. It's a win-win for all of us. So with all that said, I feel like it's your decision how you want to proceed. I have no documentation from the resident to review. But again, I do recommend that we are going on the right direction. As they mentioned, 2 years ago, we advertised to do the whole project within $7 million. Look at us at this time, 2 years after that. And the prices are going up, they're not going down. So we tried to do that 2 years ago, to do everything. And again, I have my consultant here. We had a meeting with him, and the prices are going up approximately every year 20%. And I think everybody, they can see that what's happening there in the economy.
Motion.
Any other comments or questions, commissioners? No?
Well, I have not seen any proposal for a $1.8 million tank either, but I think that the prudent way is to approve this design phase. As our engineer has stated, we have to have that. And if there's another solution, Mr. Mullins, that comes in cheaper, we go with it.
That's kind of the motion I would.
Yeah, because I think we have to proceed with this because we don't know. That's a pig in a poke. We don't know what that is, that second.
If this would be a proper motion, and I'll throw this out here and then I can make it if we're ready for it, a motion to move forward with the design phase, but also have the county manager look into this other process and see, and by all means, I mean, if we can save $7-8 million, you guys know I'm for that.
I think the issue would be if getting whatever this 1.8 million plan is, getting it by DEP, I think that might be the snag in that.
That's what I mean, the whole obstacles. I just think that from what I heard with the county manager, guys, this is urgent. We need to take action. we've talked about it long enough. We need to take action.
Yeah, I think we need to approve this.
Someone want to make a motion?
So I'd like to make a motion that we approve to move forward with the design fees and have the manager also look into the other option, the 1 point option.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion, Commissioners?
Yeah, I would just say that for all of you, there has been a lot of work done on phase one there. So people say nothing's been done over the years. I've been watching it for a long time. There are some band-aid fixes that have been done over the years there, and get rid of that big tank that's there now. You know, you just don't put a new tank in. You have to put the new tank in first. Then you start getting rid of the tank that's there now, and then you put the second tank in. So I'm not sure of what's in that proposal, the cheaper proposal, because there's some real difficult things that have to be done there, locations, things like that aren't as easy as you might think. So I would approve. I would also concur with the way we would go on this motion.
All right, so we have a motion and a second on item 8F to approve it. Call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, none. That motion carries unanimously. Okay, item 8G, excuse me. Item 8G is consideration of funding for the acquisition of an 8,000 square foot facility on Palm Coast Parkway in the amount of $1,125,000. And I believe this is our former Sears building, and
Yes.
I guess you all want to talk to us about the financing side of that. So, Ms. Brown?
Sure. Good evening, Commissioners. Lori Bailey Brown, Financial Services Director, and I'm here with Tim Telfer from our Land Management Department. Back in November, the board approved a purchase agreement for property, an 8,000 square foot facility in Palm Coast. In February, we brought forward financing that wasn't approved at that time. Tonight, we're bringing forth a proposal to purchase that property with our half-cent small county surtax. There is sufficient funds in that fund balance for this purchase with no interest expense. And we're here to answer any questions you might have.
Chairman.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Right. I brought this up last time because in the interim period between November and now, the need for this Sears building, is, as far as I could tell by talking to a variety of people, was not as urgent as it had been earlier. However, a contract had already been signed, and my proposal was, or my thoughts were, can we look at that and just see what can be done? So this is what can be done. We can't get out of buying the building, but our lawyer at that time indicated that we couldn't resell the building based on the contract, based on the financing we were going to go forward with at that time. So I think this change in the way we're going to pay for the building at least gives us that option in the future for a possible resale. Is that true?
That's true. I'm not sure. I'm not sure with commercial paper. The idea there was it was bundled with other things that we didn't appreciate. It was also a 5-year. It was a short-term loan. If the future plans changed, that might have been an issue there, but with this course, it would not be.
Okay, I
We've
just wanted to
got funds
clarify
available.
that. And also it was bundled with some things that were already in the budget for this year, and I think that was a little confusing the way it was put forward at that time. So I'm happy with what's come forward now.
Any other comments, questions, Commissioners? So I just wanted to chime in on your comments. So because we're not financing this transaction, unless I not understanding it correctly, if we determine 2 months, 3 months, 6 months from now that we don't have a need for this building or don't want to retain it, we can sell it.
Yes, sir.
Because we're not in violation of any loan covenants or any other legal requirement.
That's correct. The intent for this building, the intent for purchase of this building is for public use, which is consistent with the infrastructure sales tax.
Right.
So the intent that we're entering into purchasing this building is the intended use of the funds of this fund. If plans change in the future, the sales proceeds could be returned to the fund and used for the same.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for staff? Okay, I'll open it up to the public. Any public wish to comment on this particular item, item 8G?
I'm Tim Ganny from Plantation Bay. My question about this building is what's its used for, and then what are the funds going to be to build it to make it usable? Is it going to be another $1 million on top of the purchase price to make it usable?
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you. We will address that, sir. I just want to see if there's any other public comment. Any other public comment on this item?
My name is John Zetrauer. I'm from Plantation Bay. What was the intention of buying this building?
Sir,
What was the intention of buying the building?
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on this item? Right, seeing none, I'll close public comment. Ms. Brown, you or Mr. Telfy, you want to address those questions?
Tim Telfer, Public Lands Manager. We originally entered into this contract. We had some dialogue with the tax collector. This was originally set up to be a tax collector facility. Some needs change in that office. Certainly, we understand now that's no longer a demand, a necessity, pardon me. When it comes to something like what the retrofit cost is or what the cost is to bring it up to speed, that's really dependent upon the targeted use. We had originally estimated $150,000 for a conversion for use for the tax collector's office, but if that's no longer on the table, obviously those numbers can fluctuate.
And the tax collector still has a need for space. It's a matter of whether it fits in this facility or not.
That's correct. She still does have a need for space, and I would say that the original agreement to purchase, we did have included in the funding some rehab costs. They were very estimated, very green, and we would prefer to come back once we're ready to rehab with a better estimated cost if it's rehabbed for public use, and request permission for the funding then.
Okay. Mr. Chairman.
Sir.
Some of the hesitation on giving you numbers is that there are several things in the mix. We haven't resolved exactly how we're going to handle the sheriff's issue. Mm-hmm. We got a number of options, but should we use that facility for the sheriff, because that would be a higher priority, the cost of the retrofit would be higher. Because the use would be completely different. So staff is reluctant to throw a number out there until some of these other issues that we're dealing with gel. This was a commitment that was made back in November, I think, on this, and it is a commitment that it would be very difficult or it would raise a lot of issues if you attempted not to honor the agreement. But the county bought it at a fair price, and if in the future it turns out that this no longer would serve a public purpose, I don't think that there would be a big financial loss.
Correct. Okay. Seeing no, I guess I'll entertain a motion on this item.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve item 8G.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. That motion carries unanimously.
No,
thank you.
I oppose.
Excuse me?
I oppose.
Do we get that, Ms. Clerk? Okay, we will now move to public hearings section of our agenda. Item 9A is quasi judicial. So I'll ask down the line here if we have anything to disclose.
None.
Commissioner Hanson?
I've received several emails on this subject.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Same answer, none, but I have received numerous informational emails concerning it.
None.
Okay, and I would say this, disclose the same as Commissioner Sullivan and Commissioner Hanson received numerous emails on this issue. So this is item 9A is application 3150, request for rezoning from residential commercial, limited commercial to PUD, Plan Unit Development located at 4931 North Ocean Shore Boulevard. Parcel number as delineated there. The owner is LRA Rio LLC, and the applicant's Atlee Development Group, Inc. Mr. Mengel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Adam Mengel, Planning Director, and to describe some of the handouts that you had waiting for you today. I have a copy of my PowerPoint slides in a smaller format for you, and then two of the emails that you may have received. These were forwarded by Ms. Dance. These are in printed copies for you today. So in case you had missed these are the last two that we had received, I think, over the weekend. And then Mr. Clark's summary email front and back from our last planning board meeting last week. The approved minutes from February, those were approved at the March 12th planning board meeting along with their attachments. And then you have the beach walk tree survey in its large format. And that's also included then with the legend and the colored tree representation of what those trees are, what the species are, and where those fall in within those respective buffers. And so with that, I promise I'll be brief on this. Bear with me. This is the subject property at the northeast corner of North Ocean Shore and Jungle Hut Road. It's approximately 12 and a half acres there, I think, in size. You can see the characteristics of it. It's just northeast of that Harbor Village, Yacht Harbor Village development with Ginn. And this is a future land use map. Mixed use, low intensity is a designation on this parcel, same as it was for the Hammock Dunes DRI. You can see there to the south portion of conservation. And then this is the schematic that shows the PUD limits around this property. RC to the north, that is a commercial plat, Hammock Commercial. The Hammock Dunes wastewater treatment plant is across Hammock Dunes Parkway to the east, and Jungle Hut Road further. Then further to the east, you have the ocean. To the south, part of the Greenway on the south side of Jungle Hut Road, again, Harbor Village to the west across A1A. That R1 parcel that you see kind of northwest across A1A, that is a school board parcel that you've heard discussed several times. Flood zone map, just want to make sure you have that for record purposes, all within flood zone X. And then this is also the wetland identification map. There are no wetlands, although there is, and you'll see mention of it, there is a pond that's almost right in the bottom center of that. You can see a small dark area there, and you'll see that referenced historically throughout these graphics. And so starting in 1943, the aerial that you see here, and the trees and the tree cover is what I really wanted to show you more with this than anything else, and the fact that there was no development. And so you'll see A1A's configuration there. Jungle Hut generally showing up as that line that's there just to the bottom, and then on that on your left-hand side, that was farmland, and so that became part of Yacht Harbor, and you'll see the canal that was cut there. And so I'm going to zoom in even more. Here's that pond I mentioned right in the center of your screen, and very limited tree cover. You can imagine that. It's 1943. There wasn't a whole lot there other than the road, and we put the road where the high point was. So in relation to the ocean and then your highlands, you put the road where your highlands were. And so you were most distant here from A1A. You may remember some of this from our history we were talking about with the beach and the historic nature of the beach itself. 1952, you see a little bit more tree growth there. You can see the darker shadows in the center of that pond is still basically due center of your map here. Jungle Hut across the bottom, A1A along the side. Tree cover again predominantly along A1A. 1965, apologize for this. This is the best available aerial I have. but that's kind of still showing just the limits of the tree cover along 81A. And then this leads us to that history. Basically, some would say it was a glorified fruit stand, but it was a roadside attraction in the days before Disney World. And so this was a spot for you to stop and have a chance to get off the road. And this was Jungle Hut. This is the namesake for the area, and this was on the property. This was taken from the historic report that's part of your packet. Mr. Atlee is the contract purchaser. He's with Atlee Development Group, and they made their application in August 2018 for that 54-lot configuration they've had included within your packet, specifically at the site development plan. This is relying on that mixed-use, low-intensity future land use and not seeking a land use amendment. And so the goal here with this is to rezone from that RC zoning, and that RC then allowing a 75-foot or requiring a 75-foot minimum lot width and 9,000 square foot minimum lot area. PUD taking that down to 50-foot minimum lot width and 5,500 square foot minimum lot area. So part of the discussion that's come up early on was, could they do this in the RC? And so then this was an effort then through the rezoning to be able to effectively increase the density. Density is not determined by zoning. Density is determined by the comp plan. And in fact, mixed-use low would allow a much higher level of intensity development, higher level of density. And so that I'd say, and any time anyone would ask, I'd say it on the record, the mixed-use low would push itself towards a PUD being the more obvious method we've seen for applying those types of restrictions, being able to put in the limits on those densities and those intensities of use. But here, if we look solely at the designation of the mixed-use low, that could be as large as an 87-unit development, along with a commercial entitlement. I'll speak about that more specifically in just a moment. This is the most recent iteration of the site plan, showing the ponds, the center street, the lot configuration, the buffer areas in green, with the exception of those buffer areas then internal to the development. That's just showing your setbacks back from the roadway. Those aren't considered part of the buffer tracks. This is that tree survey that you have in larger format, and then zoomed in here to show the legend and to be able to explain that to the audience. Planning board meeting that we had this last week, the X's show, of course, that those trees would be removed, and circles on this or a check mark would show that those trees were to be retained. And again, you've got the larger format to be able to see these. And what had been requested from the February planning board meeting to the March planning board meeting is that this graphic then showed the lines of the intended buffers. So there was intended to be a 30-foot wide buffer on the west side of the project adjoining A1A, 10-foot wide buffer along the south portion along Jungle Hut, and a 5-foot along the east side where the project adjoins the Hammock, the Parkway, the Hammock Dunes Parkway. The county attorney's memo leading into the February board meeting said that the rezoning application did not, in their opinion, meet the requirements of a PUD rezoning specifically. And this taken from the intent section. As we were gearing up for that meeting, provide an opportunity for innovative urban design techniques, improve use of land, protection of valuable natural features in the community, desirable land use mix, open space, and more economical public services. And so that a little bit preemptive at the time, it came in a very advisory fashion, but was provided to the board actually back in January. I think was when that was initially made to the applicant. So part of the attorney's assertion through this process has been that the applicant has not demonstrated that those considerations have been met. We've had certainly a lot of spirited discussions about those and had advanced through our processes, and part of what we had done in this had been to present what we had previously as far as our PUDs. And so here's a quick bit of history on some of those others that are outside of the DRIs themselves. Beach Haven PUD, 195 units on 62.36 acres, 35-foot wide A1A buffer, 50-foot minimum lot width, 5,000 minimum square foot lot area. And that was back in 2004. These are outside of DRIs or other developments that would have had other restrictions or other requirements to be met. Beach Haven, completely residential, had been one of those that had swapped its commercial entitlements with another project. Jose Park PUD, December 2005, 158 units on 17.96 acres, a marina, square footage of commercial, 23,610, and a 40-foot A1A buffer. Old Hammock Plantation PUD, 26 units on 8.6 acres, 26 wet boat slips, 30,000 square feet of commercial, 40-foot A1A buffer, 40-foot minimum lot width, 120-foot minimum lot depth. The important consideration here with these projects, not that they're there, but as much as the consideration of each of these was not extraordinary. I think it's safe to submit for the record that there wasn't any kind of extraordinary requirement that was sought with these PUDs. Not to say that it was done correctly or incorrectly, as much as the item that was raised previously that there was some owing to some special consideration that made those projects unique, that made them warrant more of a PUD versus others. There are certainly aspects to each of those three projects that I think are unique and are special, and in fact, I could probably argue the same about this one as well. And so I don't want to belittle what was done or to go back and say that history is not instructive to where we are today. And just for the record, Jose Park PUD, the ordinance was never approved. It is dependent on provision of sewer for its development to be able to occur. And so part of what this development is bringing forward is the sewer that may make that ultimately possible.
I mean, in the documentation that you said that was in our package, if I read it correctly, there's over 1,300 lots in the area that are 40 or 50 foot widths, correct? Over 300 just in Sea Colony.
And yes, sir. And then you have the vested plats, and common. Yes, sir. I think our numbers are correct. Yes, sir. And then likewise, though, the counter argument. I would be remiss if I didn't say it, is that you do also then have the grouping of the lots that are across the street in Hammock Dunes, and so that those being a different configuration, a larger lot area, and so I guess I don't have that graphic here, but you do have some that are larger, and so at the same time, while you have some that are smaller or synonymous, and that was the question from our attorney's office is, is this common? Are we doing something then that is in keeping and consistent with what's there already? And I'd say you do have this pattern otherwise. But you do have at least the modern exception would be that the utilities are provided.
Sure, Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, I question the numbers, especially the Sea Colony, not the numbers so much as the layout.
Understood.
I think if you look at the plat of Sea Colony as just an example, and you look at this one, these homes are all just crammed together. You don't see that in Sea Colony.
Yes, sir.
You don't. I mean, it's a very well-planned community. This doesn't look like that. These are just jammed in there. And I'm really concerned about that. I mean, it's kind of bogus to give us these numbers that say there's so many hundred of these type lots out there. It means nothing. The numbers don't mean anything unless you look at the plat itself and see how they're organized, see how much how much free space is in there, how much green space is in there. This just doesn't look right.
To your point, going back to this proposed map or the parcel map, I was trying to wrap my head around how, with the existing zoning, how you could fit 87 units in there. Right. Do you do that without the pond? I mean, I don't know how you divide that pie up and add almost another 30 units. I don't see it.
The PUD would be the only way you could get there, and the consideration of the PUD would be, under the mixed-use low scenario, would be a commercial strip along A1A, and then residential, likely in some larger buildings to your east side.
Yeah.
And so that the RC clearly is a limiting factor here. Remembering, though, that your density is not allocated by your zoning. Zoning handles how you actually implement that density or that intensity of use. So there's no debate there.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yeah, just, I may have this wrong, but there was a lot of backup, a lot of pages of backup. And as I was going through that, it sounded like you say you will not use the Hammock Dunes water treatment plant for this unit. And therefore, how will you handle water and wastewater here?
It's one of the key aspects of this is that presently there is water from the city of Palm Coast. Wastewater would be provided also by the city of Palm Coast from an as yet now much often talked about extension from the master collection system, the lift station that was approved by this board several years ago. But during my tenure,
now.
It's not there yet. So 3,600 linear foot extension of force main would be partially funded by this applicant, running basically due north along A1A, and that would serve to be the first extension of that system that we've talked about quite a few times. So
That's part of the carrot on this.
that is the carrot, and that's probably the principal carrot with us.
Does the builder have an agreement with the city to do the 12-inch main?
They have conveyed to us, we've written it into our agreement where we're holding their feet to the fire it's the only way that this can happen. And so without that, if something falls through, our zoning goes away.
Are they willing to participate in the laterals that will have to be?
Don't think that was discussed, no, sir. And I don't know if
Maybe it should be, you know.
Well, wouldn't that be the utilities problem? I mean,
No, it's our problem. If establishing the sewer line from the bridge north is about a third of the problem, the rest of the problem is building the laterals and hooking up to the houses. That's the expensive part of this.
For the PUD agreement, I won't read all of this, as that there are some specific items. I'll go into these in better detail here in just a few minutes, actually, because we've got some of those to discuss there. And so that you've got the buffers that are built in. A1A Pride, I mentioned this at our planning board meeting. Their letter that was provided regarding their concerns. That's also part of your packet. I won't read this into the record either. And that they had concerns on several items that I think were more specifically related to the site plan. And I think you'll see some of those come out.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
We did another development over near Hammock Dunes here recently that's on A1A, and one of the issues we talked about was a second emergency exit for the unit. I don't see any secondary emergency exit here.
And I'll talk about that also. There was a provision through the Hammock commercial plat. I'll get to that in just a moment also. And so you do have that comp plan consistency. I'm not going to talk about this too much either, but this is the graphic. It's in your packet. It was also made at the Planning and Development Board. And so this has that breakout that if you were to break out those uses as required in the mixed use low, you'd have that mix. One of the first things we talked about early on was the requirement for having the minimum open space of 25%. And so the debate then quickly became, is a pond part of your open space? And our assertion is that it is if it's incorporated into your development as an amenity, is where we were making that stance. But you have then a requirement for a commercial component, a residential component, through the board's action previously on other similarly situated parcels. We're then believing that the commercial is not needed on this parcel, and so that it would then be able to develop solely as residential through your prior action on other parcels that we had brought forward. I've got some math here that talks about what those would all work out to be in the 87 units again. All of this being a very, very fuzzy theoretical maximum. The 108,000 of possible commercial you could put there, and your minimum open space at least of 3.11 acres that would be required. There was a discussion then about corridor management plan. Again, I'm not going to go through and read these, but what I had presented at the planning board is a review of corridor management plan policies, future land use policies from our comprehensive plan. I believe also recreation open space policies that were questioned previously, and rather than anyone take my word on it, I presented them point by point and was able to show those to the planning board. Where they promote these different items and different considerations. There's efforts that are here that I think are considerations to be met. Specifically, then you come into the scenic A1A corridor overlay district, and these are the requirements that I wanted to make sure that I put out on the record, and probably most specific for the planning board, is that the A1A corridor seemed to be predominantly commercial in its nature. And so where others had come back and said it's obviously got some consideration here, these standards within the corridor itself are related to commercial projects more than anything else. We have this section on the relationship of other requirements within the overlay, and certainly the overlay does take precedent if it's in conflict, and only to the point that it's superseded the application, and to the extent of the conflict provided is what was there within the corridor overlay district itself. It was a question of landscape development standards that came in as well, and so we provided that quick review. Multifamily, residential, commercial, office, public lands, 15% of the total area. Single-family dwellings, this is what the lots themselves would meet. And this is the operational requirement for tree planting, not your index tree replacement based on your 40%, but this is what every lot then would have to meet as far as its requirement for shade tree planting. One for the first, 1 per 3,000 for the first quarter acre of lot area, lots exceeding 1/4 acre, 1 tree for every additional 1/4 acre, a major fraction thereof. The A1A corridor overlay itself also talks about those perimeter buffers, but only in the context of where they buffer parking areas. And so one of the other items that I raised with the Planning and Development Board was the call fairly early from A1A and the need to maintain buffers. I'm not debating the applicability of that specific in a PUD. You can ask for whatever you want in a planned unit development. It's contractual zoning. But the perimeter buffers that are listed within our A1A scenic corridor overlay pertain specifically to parking areas. And that's what I presented to the Planning Board. It may have been news to several folks. It's a deficiency. It's something that I'm not particularly happy with, but it is the language that we have. It is the cards that we have been dealt. And so there is the requirement here is specific then, again, for that, maxing out at 40 feet, depending on your parcel depth, 25%. Is what it starts out, but that's all, again, only for your parking areas themselves. 10 foot wide on side and rear seems, again, still to be geared towards commercial development. This one has a bit of an inconsistency, I think, when you read it. No landscape buffers required for non-residential use. It's adjacent to non-residential uses. There's zoning tree planting still be required. Common driveways and sidewalks serving adjacent properties are exempt. Off-street parking and vehicular use areas, and that's where we come up with the tree preservation section. So 50104.51B, preservation of all existing native trees larger than 6 inches in caliber is required within the perimeter area except for access ways. That's one of the things we wanted to have shown on that tree plan, to be able to have that 30-foot, 10-foot, 5-foot buffer area shown very specifically for you to get a handle on how many trees were going to be preserved. Among the findings that our Land Development Code requires are two specific ones. Proposed PUD does not affect adversely the orderly development of Flagler County and complies with the comprehensive plan adopted by the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners. Number two, the proposed PUD will not affect adversely the health and safety of residents or workers in the area and will not be detrimental to use of adjacent properties to the general neighborhood. Those you have to find in order to have an affirmative action on this rezoning request. This is the section on the portions that the developer has agreed to, and I'll direct your attention to the agreement itself, and so I'll be able to answer hopefully a couple of the questions I got in the meantime. And so in the agreement itself, we review the setbacks and dimensional requirements. Among those, one of the items that we wanted to add in was a minimum 1,800 square foot living area. This came out of our planning board discussions on this. It was not included in the draft that you had. Maximum building height had been stated as 2 stories above garage, not to exceed 35 feet. We want that to just say 35 feet. One of the considerations we also have typically in developments is a 5-foot minimum rear setback for pools, hot tubs, decks, and screen enclosures, a reduced rear setback for those, and we would offer that also. So the dimensional table at subpart F in your listing of specific requirements would be changed to include a minimum 1,800 square foot living area, changing the height to just state 35 feet as meeting maximum building height, and a 5-foot minimum rear setback for pools, hot tubs, decks, and screen enclosures. Your uses would specifically exclude short-term vacation rentals. That's included within the document. You do see at subpart J mention of the cross-access and utility easement. It's a 24-foot wide cross-access and utility easement that would meet then the portion to the north adjoining the Hammock Commercial Plat. As we discussed at the Planning Board, that plat and that cross-access easement was intended for a commercial or mixed-use development on this property. Since it's developing residentially, I'm not sure if that's such a good idea in hindsight. And so we actually had a fairly good discussion, I believe, at the Planning Board about potentially leaving that off. We do have the language at J. I don't see a harm in leaving it in at this point because we have then given an out that if it's determined then that it is not feasible in the determination of the county development engineer, that cannot be done. And I'm thinking more to the standpoint of the future commercial plat. It has not developed out. There are no commercial uses there. They may not want the residential traffic running through their development. And so while we had the best of intentions when it had a mixed-use characteristic, potential development here with a residential characteristic, I'm not sure if that's the best of ideas, or alternatively making it emergency only. Knox boxes, Knox locks, that kind of thing, where it's not going to be continual flow of traffic. Depending on which way we head with that, as I mentioned in J and then subpart, I believe it's 2 there, we may have the need then for waivers to be considered as this proceeds forward with platting. And so just for you to keep that in mind. At L, in the agreement, we did call for a sidewalk to be constructed on every lot. That's something that we've discussed a couple of times. There is no requirement in our land development code for sidewalks to be constructed. Our agreement, as it is structured, does require the developer to provide that sidewalk. Alternatively, they've shown on their plan along the north side of that common area pond in the center, and along the east side, they're going to build a sidewalk that basically just runs down, kind of an inverted hockey stick, gives an area for exercise, and then taking it off of the lots themselves. I'll leave that to the board's prerogative also for the applicant to address that.
Where was that sidewalk? I don't see it on the plan, that's all.
It's that brown, let me see how far back I can go. It's that brown line that's just to the north of the pond. And so it runs along. Still trying there. Oh, there it goes. I see the brown line that's there that runs across the top and then turns. And so that's the limits of the sidewalk. Versus having them along every lot frontage. There is a provision for an entry feature at subpart N. We wanted to have included there an added number 2, where we had discussed a $25,000 contribution that would be towards the enhancement of the A1A corridor to be spent at the sole discretion of Flagler County, and that had not been put into the text itself of the development agreement. And so the summary on these 3 probably key points. So how is this different from the typical RC development? You have these extra buffers that are proposed, 30 feet along the west-hand side, 10 feet along the south, 5 feet on the east, extending the public sanitary sewer, the carrot, Mr. Chairman, and approximate costs then to the developer that he can talk more directly about, but he's given us an estimate, $250,000 of their expense, certainly more to the utility itself, but for that pipe to be installed, upsized to be able to handle future connections, 3,600 linear foot extension to this property. And then that seems to be in line with what our legislative priorities have been. And then also then the inclusion of the $25,000 payment to be used at the county's discretion for, could be sidewalk repairs, additional vegetation, interpretive kiosk, and that would be in addition to the park's impact fee, and no credit sought for any park impact fee payments. Other things you can still talk about, that these are still considerations for your deliberations, your discussions and negotiations. Reducing density is arguably required if the parcel is developed with the RC zoning. You can talk about specific definitive recreational amenities. Shall walking path, benches, dock viewing platform, something that creates that more of that amenity on the pond itself, and emphasizes that counting of that amenity as being part of the recreational aspects, incorporating design standards above those of the Land Development Code, including but not limited to Energy Star, Water Star, LEED certification, age-in-place standards. We talked briefly about these at the board. The applicants agreed to those first few, but maybe a little more hesitant on the age-in-place standards. Yes, sir.
So what exactly did they agree to?
The Energy Star and Water Star considerations, that incorporating those into the housing development. Those also could be added specifically into the development agreement itself in the text.
What about the amenities?
The amenities, they've agreed to the concept as far as, and I can share that on subpart V in the agreement. At a minimum, these amenities shall include but not be limited to a covered pavilion with a minimum area of 200 square feet under roof, picnic table and park bench, and a tot lot consisting of a minimum area of 1,000 square feet, providing a minimum of 5 activities that I have listed there. And so those, as we're sitting now, are the agreements that they've.
Where was that going to be? I don't see any room for that.
There's an area that's.
Talking about that north.
I think you've got both
corner?
to the northwest corner and then also to the, I believe it's also to
southeast
that
corner?
southeast corner in those two areas. Yes, sir.
You know, in all your developments thus far, when I think of amenities, I think of clubhouse, I think of rec room, I think of swimming pool. And here we have a pond.
Part of the pushback.
Walking path.
Walking path, yes.
Wow.
Part of the pushback, I think, has been the size of this development. I understand where you're going. And then the planning board recommendation from February 12th. It was 5-2 for approval with Mr. Corbett and Ms. Cornell dissenting. For what you could imagine, some of the reasons, you actually see that discussion again in the minutes that you've been provided. And so we've presented that to you then with these options for your consideration. Staff's stance on this is that, remember, your findings have to be met in order for you to reach that threshold to be able to say the PUD rezoning is appropriate. So you have those 2 findings you have to go back to. And I've repeated those in here with that if you follow that path to approve the request. And so we believe those criteria have been met. You do have that option then, the ordinance that's before you, the changes that I've mentioned here quickly about the 1,800 square foot minimum living area, the 5-foot rear setback for pools that I think we just had enough of those that have come in. Hindsight tells us we should incorporate those in. You can approve the request subject to additional conditions. If you come up with some more deliberations, add those into the PUD document itself and incorporate those in as part of the items that you want them to include. The developer can choose to take it or not. And remember, this agreement is with the current landowner, LRA, RIO, LLC. And so the contract purchaser, Mr. Atlee Development Group, he's got a group he's working with, the builder that he's working with is preferred builder. And certainly those terms, if they're not satisfactory to them, they'll walk away from the deal. And so that potential is there. But remember, our deal, ultimately, our consideration of the ordinance, our acceptance of the ordinance and the terms are with the property owner at present, LRA, RIO, LLC. You can't deny the rezoning request, and that's going to be principally because you feel that it either doesn't meet the comprehensive plan, doesn't satisfy the land development code requirements, doesn't meet those 2 findings that we asked you to come up with the first time. Or maybe you just come back and say it just isn't in compliance. It's just not compatible with the rest of the neighborhood. And you can do that also as part of your deliberations and your discussion with this. We do ask that you please place those findings on the record specifically. And then your final option is to table the request. We've given you a lot to chew on. If you feel that you need to have additional time to come back with this, you can do so. With that, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your attention. I'll wait any questions or comments.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Hanson?
How do you justify saying with finding 2 when we have no buffer to the north? It seems to me finding 2 says that we are not going to interfere with adjacent properties. Yet there's no buffer to the north. It's just we go right to the property line.
Commercial development typically requires the buffer to the lower use. And so my feeling there is that when that develops commercially to whatever degree it does develop, you'll know what you're buying next to when you're the residential lot buying next to it. The commercial then will need to develop, include the buffer for the residential to its south. It may be disingenuous. If you disagree, I'm open to that. That's fine.
So we're going to rely on whoever develops that parcel to the north to comply with the buffer to protect the houses that we would approve today.
As each of those lots develop, it is the more intense development that buffers from the less intense.
Can we talk about the tree preservation issue? It seems to me that in the agreement, the builder or the developer shuffles off the tree preservation to the people that are going to build the houses. That seems like an absurd handoff to me, that they're just throwing their hands up and say, we're not going to preserve any trees, we're going to cut them all down. And then the homeowner then is liable. He's going to have to replant or do something to comply. I'm a little confused by the square feet issue and the quarter, and I've just not done the math. 3,000 square foot lot, how does that compare with the, it says one tree in a 3,000 square foot lot,
Yeah.
so.
We'll just make this one 6,000 for the sake of argument, since we got 5,500. So each one of those would have to have 2 shade trees.
And that'd be up to the homeowner, would have to purchase big trees and put them in?
The shade trees, and in fact, any of our index tree replacements are, I believe they're 2.5 inch in the scenic A1A is what I'm remembering. But you have 2 requirements at play here, and I think you're hitting on the right one. There's also that's a shade tree requirement. Code, again, as confusing as it can possibly be. So if you have the barren development, no index trees on it before, you're doing a lot development, subdivision development, nothing there. You walked in and it's got nothing there. Every 6,000 square foot lot is going to have 2 shade trees off of a shade tree list that we've identified. I believe that's 2.5 inch trees that you're going to plant. And then for your index tree requirement is something different. If you had that landscape here, the 1,000 inches of those trees, then you're having to preserve or replant 40% of those inches. You've got to come back with 400 inches of replacement trees. Separate and aside, but potentially allowing for some counting on those, because you're meeting both requirements, but you can double, if you could pull from both lists, if you can use the index tree list and the shade tree list, and then plant common species of trees on your lots. But you have both requirements to meet. And
So who's going to ensure those requirements are met? Because the builder has thrown up his hands. He said, that's not my problem. I'm cutting down all these trees. It's no longer my problem. So who monitors that, in fact, we get the right number of trees and the right inches back?
we do it now through a permit process, and it is not an equal process. You have 2 possibilities for developing subdivisions in Flagler County. You can go through and moonscape. You can take everything off of it, which probably is the preferred way to do it, but none of us have that experience. Palm Coast isn't like that. All the lots were left just like they are, natural. And so that Grand Haven has that. But and so that's the idea that I've got. I think that's preferred, but our code doesn't necessarily make that the only option. That's the one that has it where you have all of the most intense stuff happen all at once. We've had a couple of developments in Hunters Ridge that way. Maybe the easiest, maybe the more prevalent option, developer comes in, cuts the roads, puts the infrastructure in, leaves the lots as they are, and then your neighbors as they come in have to come in with the dump trucks, have to come in with the graders, have to do all that heavy work next door to your house on your 5,000 square foot lot. And so you then have to deal with 2 weeks of fill that happen and the traffic that goes along with that. And then you have that on one side, then you have it on your other side, then you have it across the street from you, and you have the trees coming down. And we get a tree survey for each one of those lots as it comes in now in Beach Haven that comes in, and you have to preserve 40% of the pre-development caliper index tree inches. And then we see then that comes back more often in the development that I didn't mention, Beach Haven, the lots that come back with river birch, 20 different trees of river birch, or 20 plantings, and they're planting them everywhere they can because that's how they meet their requirements for our county code requirements. It's not a perfect science by any means. And so here there's going to be winners and losers. You can imagine on the east side, where you see in the tree survey, there's nothing there. I buy one of those lots, I got smooth sailing. I buy one on the west side, where I got all those trees, I'm not going to be in as good of a position. I'm going to have a very significant tree planting requirement because I assume from the beginning I've got to add 2 or 3 feet of fill. I'm not keeping any trees. I'm on a 5,000 square foot lot. There's no way it can happen.
Right. Looking at the ponds, it may be there and I just missed it. Do we know how deep the ponds are going to be?
Don't know at this time. I think that's very hypothetical. We know it's going to be a wet pond system. I know the engineer can speak more directly to that. Mr. Whitty is here. He can answer that better
Are
than
there
I
any
can.
plans to aerate the ponds?
I think they may have to do that just for pond health. I'll let him also
They're
handle
shallow.
that.
They have to do that.
Right.
So, okay. Where's it, when it refers to Jungle Hut Park? Are they talking about down at the beach?
I think so. Yes, sir. That
And they're going to provide. They're going to provide some amenities there.
Well, could be there, or it could be on the way to the beach walk. Could be also then adjacent, just to the south. There's a bit of a parking area that's there. There was talk about a kiosk that would describe what was there at Jungle Hut, why the name was there, and so maybe have some interpretation. There's been a couple of discussion points that we've had, but that $25,000 would be available at our discretion.
All right. Well, back to the pond for a minute. So the homeowners will be responsible for the quality of the water in the pond?
They would, yes, sir.
So that'd be some kind of assessment they're going to have to pay.
Likely.
What about the road itself? Is the road going to be our road? Is it going to be a private road?
Roads are always private for county unless you choose otherwise. It's all at the board's discretion. But
We don't want it.
We haven't had a road come in since my first week here.
Yeah.
So,
it appears to me that in the final drawing that the emergency access goes out to A1A. And I don't get that.
there's no emergency access at this point, and the only one that would be there would be that cross access that would be through to the north.
Well, no, they don't. The CDD said no, absolutely not. We can't do that.
Well, over to the east side, the only emergency access otherwise would be through the existing easement through Hammock Commercial.
Which is north.
North, yes, sir. That's the only option that's available at this point.
Are they going to lose a house to do that? We have to remove a house?
It's a possibility that if
it
we
goes
require
53 houses instead of 54.
Yes, sir. If we require that.
Well, you look at this development, and that's scary. You have a fire in lot 1, nobody's getting out. That's not good. That's all for now.
Just quickly, there's a general issue with this development. And so my question is, in that area of the Hammock, are there any other developments? I think as you go towards the big buildings at Ocean Hammock, there are some condos in there. And then if you go way up north towards Marineland, we're putting in a development there that has some pretty close together townhouses. But I'm not aware of anything like this in that area right now. So this would be a different looking development for the Hammock than there's anything like it now.
That was my point, Commissioner, this is all jammed together.
One point, are you changing the nature of the area with this development?
I think I did raise then the three that I had mentioned, and so safe to maybe take off Jose Park, but you do have, and easy enough, Old Hammock Plantation didn't happen. There's nothing there. Beach Walk may or may not, depending on how you argue that. It does have a different architectural style potentially than this one, but those are small lots, and so I'd say those are probably in keeping with this. There are arguments with that as well. So if those are the three exceptions I'd offer, then those are the three exceptions. This would be the fourth to that.
Commissioners, other questions? Mr. Mengel? Is there someone that... Go ahead, Commissioner.
Just one more. Where's the lift station going to be?
Lift station's showing, I think it's lot 14, I think, down in the southeast corner there at the intersection of Jungle Hut and A1A. That is the most efficient spot.
I see it. I didn't see it before. Thank you very much. I see it.
And there is an applicant representative here along with their team. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
But we would entertain the applicant.
Good evening. Sid Ansbacher, 780 North Ponce de Leon Boulevard for the applicant. Adam covered most of what my outline would cover, but I want to hit some of the highlights. We are going to discuss several issues at the PUD level that would otherwise be site plan issues and that were addressed more specifically site plan at the planning board, just because it seems as though several of those issues have been raised today. And after I speak, Mike Donnell, who is our landscape architect, is actually going to testify that based upon your criteria, the 40% open space is actually going to be met. Not only that we are not seeking waivers, but that it will be met based on the current standards. So with all due respect, through the chair, Commissioner Hanson, there is not going to be a pushing off to the builder nor to the property owner. We also assume that the builder will be responsible for the one replacement tree per 3,000 feet. By way of clarification, the lots are 5,500 minimum. The 1,800 square feet should fit well within that. Several things that Adam alluded to. The buffer is not required under your code. The buffer is required for every use in your code except single family. And I think Adam can clarify that point. So to that extent, as far as what is being done, we're putting a 30-foot buffer that is not required for single family on the one side, 10 feet on the other, 5 on the back, all as discussed at some length with the Planning and Development Board. And I'll note, by the way, of the 2 negative votes for the original PUD, we got a 4-0 when we continued the site plan. Ms. Cornell specifically said the biggest holdup that she had was she wanted to see how the trees would lay on the land. And she was not present at the second meeting. Mr. Corbett, who was the second of the noes, was there. He actually made the motion in support of the site plan. So the first thing is, Mr. Mingle has pointed out, is we have a buffer that, in our view, pursuant to the code, think it's unrebuttable, is not required for single family. The extension of the 3,600 linear feet we believe to be a plus as well. As far as any sort of laterals, we would commit to the laterals as running with title developer, builder for our property. I think to do it off of our property would go beyond what would be, frankly, appropriate development exactions. Certainly you have competent counsel to discuss that as far as trying to impose laterals on any off-site site. Mr. Hadid's office raised issues up front, but Mr. Hadid was the one who proposed the $25,000 money as a donation from the developer for the county to do as it wished. We agreed to what Mr. Hadid proposed. Mr. Hadid, after the initial PUD approval, came back and said, would you agree to a sign that met code that had the jungle hut as a predominant image on the sign? Our response was, we would be willing to do that. Again, I want in context to be understood, we listened to what the county attorney's office requested, and we gave what was contextually requested. As far as the 30-foot buffer, what Mr. Donnell is going to say is, in addition to the buffer, we're not seeking any exception, any waiver, anything from the 25-foot linear planting requirement along the perimeter. I also, after I discuss a few of the particulars, will introduce Brett Whitty, because there were questions raised by Mr. Clark and by a couple of the Planning and Development Board members about where the outfall was. Mr. Whitty, who is the engineer of record for this property, will testify that the outfall is going to be at the southeastern corner of the southeastern pond, and it will then drain to the east, as is the case now. And consistent with Water Management District and your code, pre-peak, post-peak requirements, we will not be introducing any more water into that drainage than is currently in the pre-development position drained. So just by way of clarification on a few of the items, so I can just tick them off before Mr. Donnell and Mr. Whitty quickly speak to those points. The 1,800 square foot house minimum was precisely because several of the planning board members were concerned. You all have typical architectural designs from our preferred builder that demonstrate that we would be meeting with the overlay requirements, which according to the architectural standards at 30611B3 have to be built consistent with recognized architectural styles. We're going to be doing a traditional development as is evidenced from what you have in your packet. We already agreed to Energy Star and Water Star development. We were somewhat concerned about the age in place because frankly, it's a little bit problematic if you do have two-story homes on the development, but we certainly, in that regard, are no different from virtually any other construction, and there's nothing that prohibits a specific builder from constructing in that regard. As far as the improvements, Mr. Mingle discussed the perimeter access around the pond. We don't need it to be an impervious sidewalk. If you want it to be shell construction and make it pervious, we are perfectly fine with that. The southeast and northwest sections where we were going to have improvements, Mr. Mingle already has discussed. The pavilion, the bench, we have a tot lot. If there are any other reasonable requests, we are certainly not averse to them. The whole point is to provide something that is reasonable, and again, just want to point out, of a scope commensurate with a 12-acre development, whether it's a PUD or whether it's straight zoning. There's only so much space you're going to be able to build. We're putting 2 spots and are more than content to put in reasonable amenities there commensurate with that sort of development and put in pervious access along the way. Also, I would point out that we have no problem with sidewalks 3 feet wide along each one of the fronts of the lots. So it isn't an either or. We're fine with doing the perimeter path. We're fine with doing sidewalks. So with that, what I would like to do is first turn it over to Mike Donnell, who can discuss our compliance with the 40% standard, and then to Brett Whitty to discuss briefly the drainage issue that was raised. Thank you.
Sid, could I
Yes,
clarify one? Because maybe I read it wrong, but I was pretty sure on the tree issue that individual lot owners were the onus fell on them to replace the trees, the way I read it. And you just said something different. So.
And Commissioner Hanson, through the chair, again, lest there be any confusion, we're fine with that being a condition that it either be developer or builder done.
Okay.
That's certainly not anything that we would want to pass along.
Okay.
And as I said, I think Mr. Donnell can speak at some length to the criteria, his review of the site plan, and his determination of the 40% compliance.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mike Donnell, Donnell Landscape Design, and I've been hired to do a tree mitigation tabulation of this site. A quick summation, if I may. Total caliper on site, 6,678 inches. That times 40%, 2671 inches. Deduct preserved caliper, we have in the A1A corridor and on some lots, and then on the other perimeter, 1,100 inches. But then before that, we deduct caliper from the proposed road right-of-way, which is that road going through the site. And that was 1714, so really net caliper were plus 143 inches. Now, we would still add, like I said, a four-inch tree every 3,000 square feet up to a quarter acre. So most of these lots are just under 6,000 square feet. Some are 12,000 square feet, some of the corner lots. So you would be adding between 8 to 12 to 16 inches, and some of the lots do have existing trees which would remain, and those would be, tabulated for those individual lots. So in essence, with that 40%, that's a lot of trees granted, but we would meet that criteria. We would fill in along A1A, which remains heavily wooded, where there is a gap of greater than 50 feet, from 14-inch tree and greater, we would infill with, shade trees or index trees per the county of 4-inch caliper. And at the same time, trying to maintain integrity in that corridor and keep it unblemished as much as possible.
Mr. Chairman. So if I understand in layman's terms, if you don't do anything, just clear the land and everything, we're within the right number of trees without doing anything.
Correct.
Okay, so I thought I heard you say.
Any other questions for this gentleman, Commissioner? No. We have somebody else, Mr. Answeberger?
Also, very briefly, because there were issues raised at the planning board regarding the drainage aspect from the pond, I asked Brett Whitty, who's the engineer of record and actually, unlike a lawyer, can actually provide evidence that's of any consequence. So, Mr. Whitty.
Are you saying it's something that we'll understand? Is that what you're saying?
In English, yeah.
Brett Whitty with Singhoffen and Associates. The ponds will be designed, the outfall structure will be designed to have pre-meet posts, so there won't be any additional impact to offsite. The site currently drains from west to the east, probably half, maybe a little more, goes to that small pond that Adam was talking about. Once that fills up, it continues east, as does the other quarter of the site. It continues east. There's an existing culvert, cuts under Hammock Dunes Parkway, that continues down the system. But the outfall in the ponds will be designed so that we meet all the county code and district codes.
It goes towards the beach?
Yes.
Okay.
I had one question on that. You say that the drainage will be the same as it is now prior to development, but you're putting in a lot of impervious structure with roads, roofs and all that. So I would think there would be more water going through the system because it can't sink into the ground where it's clear now. Where there's just forest now.
Or we're adding more storage through the ponds.
So you think there'll be the same amount of water going through that southeast corner than goes through there now?
Yes, has to be.
That's hard for me to believe with the amount of building and roads you're going to put in there. But anyway, I'm not the engineer.
And just by way of clarification, by beating a dead horse, pre-peak, post-peak, and Ms. Akatib and Adam certainly can speak to this, both under your code and under the Water Management District Applicant's Handbook, we have to meet the same discharge rate and the same hydro period. That is, it takes the same amount of time after the development is fully developed that exists today. So, as Mr. Whitty said, it has to be. With that, we would request time for rebuttal, but thank you very much.
Any other comments or questions before I open up for public comment, commissioners?
Well, just a gut feel I have that this just doesn't sound right. It just looks like too many houses crammed in a limited amount of space, but I'm still willing to listen.
Okay, if you all don't have anything else, I will open it up to public comment. Those wish to comment on this item, please approach the podium, state your name, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hello,
Hello.
I'm Jan Sullivan. I live in the hammock. Hi, Greg.
You can pull that down. There you go.
Okay. Well, my head is spinning. I have my head in your documents every week because I'm on the board of A1A. But after Adam talked, I thought I didn't know what was going on. But what I think we have here is, you know what we have here. We have a developer who doesn't want to abide by the zoning that they're supposed to abide by, so they're saying they're going to do a PUD, and they don't even have a site plan. Whatever you want to give them. You want a sidewalk? We'll put in a sidewalk. You don't want a sidewalk? Okay, we won't do a sidewalk. You want a clubhouse? We'll do a clubhouse. Anything you guys want, you tell them, and they'll try to fit it in as long as you give them their PUD. They don't even have a site plan for you to look at yet. Everything seems to be in flux, so I don't know how you can approve something when you don't even know what it is. You're going to hear this a lot, but I'm going to take a little different approach on this, which is the purpose of the PUD zoning is to provide things that a strict interpretation of zoning regulations would otherwise prohibit. So what things are they providing that a regular zoning wouldn't give you, wouldn't provide them? Where's the innovative urban design? Where's the creative and flexible concepts? I guess it's flexible because whatever you tell them you want to give them or you want, they'll put in. This just feels wrong. And Mr. Hanson, to your point about Sea Colony and Beach Haven, you're right. Those lots are close together, but there's multiple roads in each of those communities, like 15 roads in Sea Colony and 10 roads in Beach Haven. So it's not just one racetrack around. I implore you to think about this more and think about what precedent it's setting for the community, for the hammock. Your documents think the hammock is special. Your documents show, your county documents show that thoughtful discussion has occurred and that you thought that the hammock was special. And I'm not sure that this is the time yet to vote on this and to, because it's going to set a precedent. Thanks a bunch. Bye.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you.
Thanks. You have an extra copy, so we'll give to the clerk, too. You did great. Thank you.
My name is Dr. Lynn Bravo Rosewater, and I live in the hammock. One of the things that I think was very interesting about what's happened here is that a lawyer from the TRC wrote a letter the first time this was going to be heard, saying that they did not meet the criteria. And what that letter talked about is just what some of Jan Sullivan has said, that a PUD is to provide innovative urban design, creative and flexible concepts, and protection of natural features and open spaces that a strict interpretation of zoning regulations would not otherwise permit. So in this letter, January 9th, dated 2019, Sean Moylan wrote that the current presentation for Beach Walk, without more, does not meet the purpose of the PUD under the LDC. When this presentation was then replanned and made, there was absolutely no difference in what got presented, except that they said they were going to age in place. That was their innovative. They were going to age in place. Okay? Otherwise, nothing changed. This is the letter one of your attorneys sent. Okay? So now the question is this project one of innovative urban design? Does placing 54 houses on 7.11 acres, because you've got to have open space. These 54 houses are going on 7.11 acres, which is an average, I understand some will be bigger than the others, of 0.0136 of an acre. So what are we going to have? We have aging in place is laudable, but does it meet the criteria of being creative and flexible concepts? Does it protect natural features and open space? I don't think so. There will be houses overwhelming their lots, and that's what you're going to have. House, 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 house. I don't know how they're going to get other things on the lot after they get the houses on them, because there's going to be so little space with the size of the houses that they're building. And then even what they're counting as their open space is pond. That's their water retention. So they're counting that. That's double dipping, because the land development code says you have to have that. Well, that's their pond. Oh, we'll put a bench around it. Now we provided recreation. I mean, it's just a use of language that's problematic. I just want to say that the CDC came to the first meeting where this was not held, and they said absolutely they were against it. And I feel like this is not a good plan. You've got two scenic highways involved. Jungle Hut is a scenic highway, A1A. I think this is a terrible plan, and I hope you'll vote it down.
Thanks, Dr. Rosewater. Okay. Next speaker, please.
Hello, I'm Jan Cullinane. I also live in the hammock. As I was sitting there listening to the presentations, and if you're same age as I am or around there, the Joni Mitchell song of Pave Paradise and Put Up a Parking Lot kept running through my head. And other people have said some opposition. I would like to talk about Hammock Dunes Parkway, which in and of itself is one beautiful road. And I think having 5 feet just as far as a barrier is way too insufficient, not even talking about what's going on with the 54 homes. Also, and I ride my bike, I walk, I drive with my windows down, I think one other issue people need to be aware of is with that wastewater treatment plant, which we saw is right across the street. There, when the wind blows correctly, the smell wafts over what will be that entire development. I actually called Atlee Development and said, I didn't hear back. I left a message. You really need to be aware of that odor that is going right over across what the development will be. And if I were a homeowner purchasing in there, I would not be happy about that. So that is something that needs to be looked at. I don't know if that place is operating correctly, but you will definitely smell it. I've asked other neighbors, and they've corroborated that. So I would ask you to really think carefully about this entire thing. This place is special. I write books on retirement, and I can tell you what people are looking for. This place is a gem, and I hope it will be kept that way. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Hi there. Can you hear me? Of course you can. I don't need a microphone. Watch it. My name is Marie Elena Calabrese. I live in Sea Colony. I originally came and I had a few ideas. I also sent all you guys an email. I never could understand when a developer buys a piece of property. It's zoned a certain way. That's it. But no, they can't make any money. So now they want us to change so they could make more money. I have a problem with that. I also have a problem with the loss of the trees. It's despicable what they want to do. All right. The next thing is, does any one of you know what Levittown looks like? Levittown, New York, very famous? Okay. That was built at the end of the Second World War to provide cheap housing for the veterans coming back. That's what this looks like. It's ugly. I mean, Sea Colony, yes, the houses are close, but have you been in there? The roads twist, the roads turn. It's a completely different issue. And the fact of what she said about they're going to put 54 houses on 7 acres, there's something wrong with this. It just doesn't equate. It's just the bill and the houses. I don't know if I heard this right. 1,800 feet minimum size of the house. That's a very big house for the lots they're proposing. So I really want you to please, please consider this, because this will not be an enhancement. I mean, if you look at Palm Coast, all the roads are beautiful. They're all circles within circles. Whoever designed it did a great job. This is not a great job. This is shoving all the houses you can get in to make the maximum amount of money. And it's just wrong for anything, but for the hammock, it's especially wrong. That's about it. I think I covered everything I wanted to say. I thank you very much, and I really don't want to see that. I truly don't want to see that. There's not enough. And this pond, recreation, let's face it, it's being put there for drainage. And where is it this pond going to drain to? I mean, want to talk about drainage? We had issues in Sea Colony with that storm. And we had an outlet for our ponds, and we still had issues. So I don't see how this is going to enhance the hammock in one way, shape, or form. So please, please, everybody's asking you to consider. I am begging you, please don't do this to the hammock. Please.
Okay,
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. Roger Cullinane. I also live in the hammock, and I don't want to be repetitive, but you know, this area, like when you start heading on Palm Coast Parkway towards the hammock and you get from Kings Road and you start going east, it's just spectacular with the buffer, with the trees and all, so you don't see all the development. You come over the bridge and then you go Hammock Dunes Parkway, and it's just such a beautiful road with the canopy and all. And to think that they're going to rip down the trees and put a 5-foot buffer there, so that instead of seeing all these beautiful trees and everything and all these nice houses, we're going to see we're going to lose the view, and we're going to have a view of 54 houses just jammed into these little lots, and the whole thing just feels wrong when you sit here and listen to it. And the amenities, a pond, a retention pond, and someone raised, well, we should have sidewalks. Well, no, instead of sidewalks, we'll put a little cement path down to this amenity, and then what about a pavilion and a 10 by 20? I think they said a 10 by 20 foot pavilion. That's so small it's almost laughable. It's like a miniature amenity. The only good thing I've heard tonight at all is that they won't allow any short-term rentals, and I'm not sure how that would be enforced. But other than that, everything I heard sounds terrible, and I hope you don't approve it.
Thank you, Mr. Cullinane. Next speaker, please. Join the club.
Yeah, I don't want to drag this out, but I have something different to say, so maybe it'll keep you entertained. The first thing I noticed was that the 4-inch trees are required, replanting a 4-inch minimum. So that is 477 trees have to be replanted, which equals 9 trees per lot. I would like to see how they're going to plant 9 hardwood trees in each of those lots. My name's Dennis Clark. I live in the hammock. I noticed one of the requirements for a PUD is that it requires commercial use, minimum 15% commercial use, and it can't be more than 50% of the development area. You may recall that I argued to keep the residential component of the RC zoning back in 2017. You may not have been here listening to that. That was pretty boring. But the now that we've taken the residential component out of RC zoning, we decided on this development that there's no need for commercial development in RC zoning. So therefore, you can do this without any commercial development. It says the commercial requirements to this parcel are met on an area-wide basis, not requiring development of the retail and office uses described in the future land use policy. If you go back to 2003, we had a charrette, where all the members of the community met and came up with a lot of ideas. And the biggest idea for development of these kind of places was a mixed-use village center. That was what we were promoting. Just want to point out that the scenic A1A corridor management plan encourages developers and property owners to retain oak trees and other native vegetation, protect trees and other natural vegetation along the corridor through enforcement of appropriate ordinances. And I would say that the $25,000 donation does not make up for losing 523 index trees. Just because we approved bad planning before doesn't mean that we should continue. Responsible land use planning protects the environment and recognizes the land as an essential element. This unique area and environment deserves better planning methods and does not meet the requirements of a PUD as specified in the Land Development Code. We can do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Good evening. My name is George Macco, and like everyone, I live in a hammock. Thank you for letting me be here. And all I have to say is, so what all this seems to come to is what Attorney Moylan wrote on January 9th. A PUD cannot be used solely as a vehicle to gain a blanket set of variance. And it almost seems to me that when they offered the $25,000, donation, it was like an insult. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other speakers?
Dennis McDonald. Dave, I heard something.
You got to go through the chair, sir.
Right. Okay. I heard Dave say something that kind of prompted me to get up and offer something to you. So you were talking about before pervious and impervious when it came to drainage. One of the interesting facts is that the largest municipality in this county, Palm Coast, has a very interesting game that they play, okay? And it essentially goes like this, if you talk to Ray Tyner. If it's in the planning stage, they consider a pond pervious, which is what you just got told, okay, before. As soon as it's finished, and you, the owner who owns that pond, because we've been through this, okay, has to pay their drainage fees. The city of Palm Coast considers that to be impervious material. Now, I don't know how you can claim it's impervious on one and pervious on the other, but I watched your face when all of this was going on, and then all you commissioners, it was kind of like pervious, impervious, or whatever. But in their case, they played on both sides. When you're planning it so that you don't have to set more aside, okay, they consider it, pervious. Then later, when they want to turn around and charge you on it tax-wise, their engineers from their drainage department say, absolutely, this is impervious. So their engineers for their drainage department are saying that any pond is impervious material. So you might want to consider all that, what you're hearing. Thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Evening, I guess it is now. My name is Greg Lopato. I just moved to the hammock. I moved here 8 months ago, and I hope I didn't make a mistake. Moving here 8 months ago. I worked for a Fortune 500 company, 40 years as an engineer. And this project that was presented today would never make it past my desk. Not because of the size of it, but because of the confusion, the gray lines. There's no ownership of anything. So going through the whole project, I would never accept this. I would never put it forward. We have too many questions, too many concerns about it. An 1,800 square foot house, there's not one house in my neighborhood. I live a mile away. That's 1,800 square foot. And also, retention pond is not an amenity also. So I ask you, put this back, have them go back and rework everything, and try to meet what the hammock was supposed to be. A prestigious neighborhood, not the next Orlando, but the next maybe Naples or Palm Beach or something like that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comments?
Good evening. My name is David Ashman. I also live in the hammock. This proposal is ridiculous. One, the density that is proposed is not sustainable. There is no provision for recreation for anybody in that. There is also this talk about trees. Having served on many architectural review boards in communities I've been involved in, planting these trees today at 2 inches in diameter only leads to the problem 20 years downstream when that tree is no longer 2 inches in diameter. It is now 2 feet in diameter, tearing up sidewalks, tearing up the very drain lines we're talking about, going into the houses with the root systems and busting up the roads, which the developer is kindly leaving up to the potential homeowners to solve. Please reject this.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments?
Good evening. I'm Roberta Paletta. I live in Halifax Plantation, so I'm a little bit of a carpetbagger in this situation. However, I do use a lot of the facilities in Flagler County. I'm just literally over the county line. The planning department and the Board of Commissioners, your predecessors, have done a lot of wonderful things. And in Palm Coast, the Parkway is a wonderful example. Mayor Holland's father saw to that to preserve the canopy. There's been a lot of good things, such as the bike trails going in, bike lanes along the roads. You see the access points through the hammock, which is a primarily private development, that gives the public access at Old Salt Park and Jungle Hut. I applaud you all for that, and I would hope that in continuing in the same vein, that you would, at the very minimum, table this proposal. A couple of reasons. Besides the tree loss, I haven't heard anybody mention who is supplying the water. Where is that going to come from? Is Palm Coast going to annex this development and then supply the water? And then you look at the density. I have to agree with you, Mr. Hansen. It's just too much. 7.11 acres with 54 homes. That is not creative development. Why not put in attached condos? You could get a number of units in there that could allow for more green space and current tree preservation. I think there are other options for the developer. I think there's a lot of things for you as a board to consider. So I would respectfully request that this at least be tabled for further consideration. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker.
Good evening, George Mayo, Palm Coast, and I don't live in the hammock. But looking at some of this, hearing Adams, what the speech that he gave, it said that the developer is agreeable to amenities. Now, if I remember the last meeting or so, the development down on Flagler, Volusia County, for several years now, the developers pledged amenities, and they have yet to see anything. So again, just the concept of amenities just sounds a little wishful. Concerning the septic system, our governor, one of his priorities for Florida is water. Yes, they're going to put in the main for the sewers. Mr. Hansen referenced the laterals. Who's going to put that in? Adam said, we're going to keep their feet to the fire. Well, that is not anything that is doable in my book. Feet to the fire does not say laterals are going to be put in. I know I've spoken to someone previously who lives in the hammock. Many houses got flooded out from the hurricane. People had to replace septic systems. And as the screens were flashing by so fast, I couldn't read everything, but I did see septic system in there and maintenance. So does that mean if people don't want to be hooked up to the sewer system, they'll be allowed to put in septic systems? On tonight's news before I came here, there was the story that in Brevard County, they are having to replace or put in sewer lines for 8,000 homes with septic systems because it's polluting their mosquito lagoon or whatever, the intercoastal. You're too close to the intercoastal. If that floods one way or another, it's going to either just go right down to the beach or right to the intercoastal. So without a definite of what is going to happen with the sewer lines, I would at least ask you to table this, just looking at that. So I think that would be prudent. We're all about water. We just had people here from Plantation Bay with water problems. I don't think the county wants to look at another development somewhere down the line and saying, gee, we have water problems. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayo. Any other speakers on this item?
Good evening. My name is John Emery, and I didn't really plan to speak tonight, but since I live in Beach Haven, I took a little bit of exception on this community here looking like Beach Haven. The big point I'm going to make is that in Beach Haven, the front lots are 55-foot. The first half of the community is 55-foot lots, but they all have rear-loading garages, and there's space behind there for an alleyway that's only clay or sand so that you can drive through there, and it's pervious and it gets drainage, and people park in the back. This community here, everybody's at 1,800 feet and 35 feet tall. We're talking about 3-story houses with the entire front yard is going to be a 2-car garage driveway. So I don't even know where they're going to plant the trees in this community. But it's going to look like a rental community with just concrete. As you're driving around that little racetrack there, it's going to be 2-car garage and driveways all the way around there. And I don't think it's not even going to look nice. I don't think. And if you want to see a community that looks exactly like this, I used to be on the board of Beaches Habitat in Atlantic Beach, up north a little bit. We just built a habitat community that looks just like this. And what I just described to you is like this. There's no garages, but everybody has a 2-car pad in front of their house. And there's very little grass, there's very little trees, but it gave a nice place for people to live. But this is not a community for the hammock. So thank you.
Any other speakers?
Very quick rebuttal. Sid Ansbacher again.
Yes, sir.
Couple of points of clarification. As you all know, there's an existing 30-foot vegetated and treed buffer in the county right-of-way to the east of this property. So the 5 feet actually makes it 35 feet. Adam can confirm that. It's not merely 5 feet. It's 5 feet of buffer added to what is already a very verdant strip. 2-story maximum, not 3-story. As the chair pointed out, in the area there are 1,323 lots that are 40 and 50 feet wide. By the way, the closest one is directly across A1A to the west of, or to the west of us. So we would argue that it's pretty well established that 40 and 50 feet are not uncommon in this area. And moreover, as Mr. Mingle pointed out at the planning board, the area is virtually built out. There are the Cinnamon developments to the north, us, almost nothing else, or a couple of other things. But when you're talking about setting a pattern, this is an area where we are one of the last donut holes. I would certainly disagree with the position that we are creating amenities on the fly. We've already said we would have a tot lot in one corner and the pavilion in the other with bench. What we have indicated is Mr. Mingle in his staff report indicated that there were other potential amenities available. As we said, we are not averse to adding them. We are, as far as we can tell, not uncommon in this area, and we believe, with all due respect to the several people who purport to be saying what Sean Mannion said meant said, Mr. Mingle, I think, can speak for staff. The two things that we added were specifically things that Mr. Mannion's boss, Mr. Hadid, specifically said were things that would make it more contextual. The $25,000, that didn't come from us. That came from Mr. Hadid. The idea of the jungle hut being thematic on the sign was Mr. Hadid's idea of doing something that was contextual. I'm not saying Mr. Hadid has become the godfather of our property. What I'm saying is that those were the only subsequent comments that we got from that office. I understand that this morning Sean asked if there was a tree study and was told yes there was, and that's all that he said. So whatever the concerns were in January, and whatever you, as the quasi-judicial finders of fact tonight, decide, I just want to make sure that the record is clear. That was then, this is now, and we believe we did exactly what that office asked us to do. So with that in mind, I thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, sir. Adam, any final words from you? No? Okay. We'll close public comment now and bring it back to the commission for discussion and/or a motion.
Well, I'm still very uncomfortable with this, and my sense would be to delay this until we have a little more specificity on what this is going to look like. I would actually like to see an artist's concept of what this neighborhood's going to look like. What are these houses and driveways, and because these houses go from 1,800 square feet to 2,600 square feet on a 5,500 square foot lot. I mean, I'd like to see what it's going to look like. I'm concerned about the buffer to the east. I heard Mr. Ansbacher talked about there was already a 25-foot there, but that's a bike path and a walking path, and it's beautiful. And I don't think a 5-foot buffer is enough on that side. I think the amenity issue is screwed up. There are no amenities. I don't consider what they've proposed as I don't think those are amenities at all. So I don't think there are any. I'd like to see specificity on the ponds, how deep they're going to be, and whether or not they're going to be aerated. I'd like to see a plat that actually showed what a house footprint's going to look like on each one of those lots. I mean, I just have the sense that you're going to stand in between them and be able to touch each house. I don't think that's a good look for the hammock. I'd like to see in writing the tree responsibility issue, that the builder's going to take responsibility for replenishment of the trees. And I'd like to see specifics on the sidewalks, not, oh yeah, we'll build sidewalks. If you're going to build sidewalks, put them in the plan. So my sense is that we should table this and until we get a little better report.
Okay, any other comments?
Just a question for our lawyer. I'm stating that given the possible motions we can make, approve the request subject to conditions, deny the request, table the request, all those are within the scope of what we've heard and what our capabilities are as a board to make a decision. Or are there any limitations on what we can actually pass at this time?
No, those are your options. Those have been stated clearly for you. If you want to table it, I would recommend rather a continuance to a date certain, just to protect your, so that you don't have to re-advertise it. And it keeps the kind of the project moving, that you have it continued to a time certain, if that's one of the options that you're considering.
Commissioner Mullins, anything?
All. Nothing.
Okay. I cannot get past the how this satisfies the innovative urban design and creative and flexible concepts, and I would even move past tabling and seriously consider denying the request, just based on all the discussion that we had, and I'm not opposed to that, but open.
Well, we have a motion.
There's no motion.
I'll make a motion, we deny the request.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Call the question. All those in favor of denying the request, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that's 5 ayes. That motion carries unanimously to deny the request. What's that? We have to move on to, how do we handle 9B?
I had said previously, I think my advice to planning board, and we didn't have advantage of, maybe we did, actually. I'm not sure if Ms. Stengel was counsel that night, but these are dependent items. 3158 is dependent upon the 3150. I think you've, I'd probably say for the clarity of the record, my approach would be to go ahead and hear a presentation, provide, take action, but go ahead, Ms. Stengel. There are separate quasi-judicial applications,
Go ahead and read it
unfortunately.
into the record. I mean, it can't be approved because you didn't approve the rezoning.
Prerequisite is the 3150 application.
If you want to read it into the record and ask if anyone has any comments, and then make your motion. But
Okay. So item 9B is a consideration of a quasi-judicial action for request for a review of a PUD site development plan in the PUD district for Beach Walk PUD located at 4931 North Ocean Shore Boulevard, parcel number delineated there, owner LRA Rio LLC with the applicant Atlee Development Group. This is a public hearing. It's quasi-judicial and requires disclosure of any ex parte communication. Has any commissioner received any written or oral communications regarding this quasi-judicial item? Commissioner Erickson?
No.
Commissioner
No.
Hanson?
No, same comments I made previously.
Commissioner Mullins, and I have the same, nothing different than what I disclosed before, so. Okay, Mr. Mankel?
Mr. Chairman, for the brevity of the record, I'll just allow then for my staff report and previous testimony that I gave relative to 3150 be entered into the record for this item. I think also I'd encourage those in the public, if we're okay with that, Mr. Chair, if their comments could be also then spread on the record for 3158. That way we don't have to go through the equal hearing. I think your grounds are going to be the same for the denial on this one, and I'll even entertain then the same request then from the applicant. Thank you.
Okay, any comments on this one from the public? All right, seeing no one approach the podium, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we not approve the quasi-judicial application 3158.
We have a
Second.
motion and a second. Call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Unopposed, that motion carries unanimously. Okay? All right. We have additional reports and comments. Item 10A is report from our county administrator.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll be brief.
Thank you.
We continue to move ahead on some of our high priority items. We hope to come to you very soon with some options for the sheriff. We are also will have in your hands supporting documentation for the Bing's issue, and the staff is working very hard. I just want to go on record as saying that this is my fourth government, and I am just really impressed with the staff that you have on the bench. I've got folks that I have sort of tested and given them problems with broad discretion, and they have impressed me with the results. I feel very fortunate to have come into that situation where you've got such a good bench, and just appreciate the opportunity to work with these guys.
Is that it, sir?
That's it, sir.
All right, great. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Cameron?
Nope.
Nope. Ms. Stengel, anything for you this evening?
No, nothing.
Thank you so much for your work with us this evening. Appreciate it. Commission action, commissioners, anything for not reports or comments, but specific action? Mr. Erickson?
None.
Mr. Hanson?
Yes, I have one. I would like to go on record as saying that we need our county staff to be working on beach replenishment and beach renourishment beyond what we've done so far and what the Corps of Engineers is going to do. I say that because we have to start getting permits for follow-on work on the dunes and also for using the sand from the dredge to do beach replenishment. At this point, we don't have permits to do that. So I would, Mr. Chairman, I move that we direct the staff to continue their efforts on beach replenishment and dune repair.
Okay. So we're taking that as a motion, correct?
That's a motion, right? I just want to give them direction that that's something that they should be looking at.
Anybody want to second that motion?
Second.
Okay. Discussion by the board.
My only discussion would be that it's a very general recommendation.
Very general, very general.
Specifics.
No specifics, just we need to be looking ahead, and because that's going to come up and bite us if we don't start the process of getting permits and stuff down the road, because it's 2 years down the road. Yeah, but we need to start relatively soon.
Mr. Chairman, we will prepare a timeline for those applications and have it to you in the one of the April meetings.
Okay. Does that satisfy you, Commissioner Hanson?
So we don't need to do a motion to do that? You're just going to,
No, sir.
I withdraw
You
my
said
motion.
you wanted it done. We'll do it.
Okay, I withdraw my motion then.
That's good for me.
Okay.
I would like to just reiterate, let's focus on longer term solutions. This stuff that was just done, that's washed away already, we've had to remove the rubber mats. That's millions of dollars wasted. And it's great to push this stuff forth, but we need to start pushing smart.
Yes, sir. Just as soon as we finish firefighting, we'll get into fire prevention.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Sullivan, anything on
Nothing
commission
at this
action?
point for action.
Mr. Commissioner
Nothing.
Mullins? Okay. So now we'll move to community outreach. Again, this is a 30-minute time period allowed for public comment for items not on the agenda. Each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes to address the commission. Speakers should approach the podium, identify themselves, and direct comments to the chair. People go in the other direction. All right. Yes, sir. Seeing no one approach the podium, I will close the community outreach portion of our agenda, bring it back for some final commission comments and reports. Commissioner
I just had one. Earlier today, we named a new person to the TDC council, and we were replacing Tom Grinds, who I understand is retiring from the Hilton Gardens.
Retiring.
Right. And right, I know, but again, I haven't heard anything. This guy was number one and knew how to run a hotel. That hotel down there was one or two in the country from the Hilton Gardens for 2-3 years in a row. And I just applaud him and thank him for his contributions to our TDC and to the county here. Thank you.
Anything else, Commissioner?
God, I could give anybody compliments, but you want one? I like your haircut. No. No, that's it for me.
Thank you. Commissioner Hanson?
I was out at the Seafood Festival this weekend. It was a great event. Thousands of people attended, and the food was outstanding, and the music was better. It was good. It was a good event.
Okay. Commissioner Sullivan?
Just, I hate to do it really quick. On the library board, we have selected a person to replace Alan Peterson. Alan Peterson has had a long history as a city council, Palm Coast City Council member, commissioner here on the board, and absolutely dedicated to the library over his years. But everyone runs the clock out, and it's probably time to get some new blood in there on the board. But I just want to make sure everybody understands that Alan Peterson has given a lot so far, and I'm sure he'll continue to do it in the future.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anything else?
Yeah, I'll zip through this real quick. So, great town hall meeting at Hall Creek. The residents are very excited out there. They feel like a lot's starting to occur and get done. They shared some concerns about some of the parks and the drainage, and then also their desire for fiber. West Side, we're working on some signage for some really dangerous intersections that we're looking at. Also, Hall Creek talked about the intersection, Cody's Corner, and was concerned about the roundabout being out there, and I told him that I would schedule a meeting with DOT, and if we can do that, schedule it with them and kind of let them come out and talk a little bit. Espanola, phenomenal stuff going on over there. An update, we've got lighting at the community center. The woods were cleaned up on the road, and signage. At this time, the bus stop is on hold because they've a little concern about where to put it. So we've just let them mull that over and deal with that. On Friday, the 22nd at 9 a.m., we have a business summit with the mayor. I've got one at the Palm Coast Community Center, and I will have people from the USDA from Washington coming in, and also the National Association of Counties is coming in. And that's based on my trip into D.C. I can't recommend highly enough that we get more involved and are up there in D.C. Someone going up there annually. They talked about new grants coming out. It helps set policy for counties. We need a voice up there, not counties in the Midwest making decisions for us. They talked about fiber, housing, public safety, how we're putting some very serious burdens on the sheriff and the sheriff's jails. And there's funding that we can get for the opioid and public safety that they talked about, that they have funding that communities aren't even going after. So it's really important to, that was a very successful meeting. And as I told everybody, I'm bringing Washington back here, so they'll be here Friday discussing some of this stuff. And there'll probably be some proposals coming up pretty soon, but infrastructure needs that they're offering to support are very strong. Two other things I want to do. I really want to praise the manager and the action that you guys are doing since you got in here. I don't regret a day that I made that motion to make a change in the management, and I'm very, very content. And I know the public is, because they've stressed it. I appreciate the staff. You were able to let the staff float up and rise above, not repress them. And I'm very proud of that, and very confident and very optimistic in our future for Flagler County. I continue the good work. Your situational awareness reports are great. They're doing a lot of community talking. I've had more emails about the Waste Pro, and then you sent the situational awareness report that you're working on it and you're concerned with it, and that staff's working on it. So it's really good communication. It's something that this commission didn't have. It's something that was obvious it wasn't there, the communication and the daylight of seeing what's going on. Also want to, say that the tourism and development, they're working on helping highlight Flagler Beach, the business in the beach area, large planned media buys, intensified content, article creation, and things to do. Just a number of things. New website, promoting it, Dodge the Dunes. Matt, appreciate you doing that and continue it because Flagler Beach does need the effort. Now, on the flip side, these counties and cities, these cities need to be a part of this. So you can extend the olive branch, but they need to take it and be a part of it. So that's something I'm going to be encouraging them to do as I speak to them. And then one of the final things and the most serious thing, I've sat up here for 3 months now, and this sheriff center and this plantation water thing, I'm appalled by what's going on with it. I have uncovered and looked into things and been directed to things that I have found 100% sure. I am calling for a full investigation. Text messages, emails, everything. I want to see from Nate McLaughlin and the other commissioners that voted for that. This is over $30 million that this community is going to lose by these decisions. And I have looked into stuff and see disclosures where on the sales, they were defining reasons to walk away from purchasing these things, and we went on and did it. This is our county's money. This is unheard of, and I want to see us go after this because I'm tired of seeing the taxpayers flip these bills of these bad decisions. This stuff is not going to happen in this county anymore, not with me sitting back and being quiet about it. And I think we retro and go back and go after these individuals. So my feelings are to start pushing and looking forward to looking into that a little bit more, because both of them reek of a lot of problems. The people that are complaining about them aren't just speaking. I've walked in and seen them, and I'm very concerned about the ethics, the text messaging back and forth, the privacy stuff that was going on between the sellers and disclosers. This stuff needs to be looked into. That's all I've got.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Just two things. One, I wanted to, I was remiss in not announcing at the beginning of the meeting that our Roy Seeger, our executive airport, was the recipient of the FAA's 2018 General Aviation Safety Award, which is a big deal. And again, I apologize to Roy. I know he's not here any longer. That I didn't bring that up earlier. I just wanted to make sure I did say that. And then also, just to let the public know that my fellow commissioners and I will be traveling to Tallahassee next week to participate in the legislative days. And we will be working hard to try to bring back the financial commitments that we're working with our legislators on, as well as protected home rule at every turn, and do what we can and make sure that that our county gets its fair share of the resources from the state government and protect our local ordinances like the short-term vacation rentals. That's an important item for us, and we're going to put the effort behind it to try to do that. So. I don't have anything else. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move that we adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. We're adjourned.